Hi everyone, thank you for coming. For those of you, I'm going to have my notes out if you don't mind. A lot of pre-editing at the last minute. I want to make sure I touch on a lot of important things to kick things off. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Heather Ann Brower. My name is Heather Ann Brower, and I am one of the USA U Board of Director members, one of the player representatives. I started playing Ultimate here in Seattle at the University of Washington as a graduate student in 2004, and since then have played Club Ultimate on both coasts in North Carolina and here in Seattle. I also had the opportunity to play with the 2014 Women's Beach Master Team in Dubai, which was a pretty incredible experience. Like many of you, I got really involved in Ultimate as a coach and organizer because I was so passionate about the game and about the sport. I started coaching also here in Seattle at Montlake Community Center, coaching elementary school age players back around the same time I started playing. And I now currently coach at Ingram High School here in Seattle, and this will be my 10th year coaching for the Youth Club Championship teams. I got involved organizing with USA Youth pretty early as well as a sectional coordinator, and over the last 10 years have worn many different hats and been volunteering for the organization. The most exciting and coolest opportunity that came from that is co-founding the Girls Ultimate movement, which was really inspiring because it really brought together voices from across the country and was this nationwide project and collaboration talking about how to create more opportunities and give girls a voice in the sport. I'm really hopeful and excited about this process in strategic planning and hopeful that we all can contribute a voice to what the next strategic plan for USA Ultimate is look like. Being part of the Seattle community is a really incredible experience. We really show up for one another. We stand up for one another, and that goes for coaches, for players, for organizers, for parents. It's really a space where we all share and authentically and challenge each other to have difficult conversations. A lot of the hard conversations are around sport growing and how do we fit into that picture. I know that here in Seattle there's a lot of critical feedback about USA Ultimate, and given the Ultimate ecosystem in Seattle, I see where a lot of that comes from. I kind of wear both hats and get to be on both sides of that conversation, and we're all in this room to have a conversation about, bigger and beyond Seattle as well. I'm really hopeful that we can all have this voice. Seattle, USA Ultimate's here today to really hear Seattle's voice, to hear what we as a community have to say, what we have to share, and that's really going to come into play in how we're shaping the strategic plan for the next 5 years. Tonight we really have another opportunity, like we did with GUM, to brainstorm together, to welcome the USA Youth staff and board members into our world, and to have a say in the future of our sport. What I really took away from GUM was that the community and grassroots can really bring about change. And as you'll hear tonight, the format of the event has changed. And that's changed because of the voices of the community outside of Seattle. Because members of the community were speaking up and saying that what they wanted from these events, what they wanted from this tour, they wanted something to be a little bit different. And the big topic around that is equity. And so what's going to drive our conversation tonight, and what's really going to be that shift, is that there's going to be a big emphasis on equity. And really opening up a space for us to come together and have that conversation. And understand that that is going to shape and be overarching in all the other topics we're discussing. And I think that the thing to take away from that is there's a shift right now. USA is really here to listen and wants to hear that. And I was driving over, my parents are in town in Connecticut, and out and back. And we were driving over here, and I was saying how excited I was because I've had so much fun interacting with the people in this room, in this community, in so many different pockets. And I've had a lot of fun working with the USAU staff and the ideas there in a lot of different pockets. And this is the first time that I remember in my career of Ultimate that I've seen this community all be in one place and all of these people be in one room and get to really share this experience. And I'm really excited for what can come from those conversations tonight, and really inspired by what's coming from the conversations that have happened so far. And so thank you for being here. Thank you for being a part of this. We're going to have a pretty packed moving agenda tonight, and just want to let you know that if you need to leave at any point, if we're running over the time that you need to be here, you'll be dugout. We want this to be a fluid conversation and an opportunity for everyone to feel comfortable and engaged. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Henry Thorne. I'm married and Ultimate player. I have 2 Ultimate playing children, Alex and Max, who believed, along with me, that Seattle was the center of the Ultimate universe. And the only place Alex looked outside of Pittsburgh for college was here. And we came over and looked and didn't do it because I was in Pittsburgh. But this is the Ultimate universe right here. And you are the people who have been building that. And I imagine a lot of you in this room have made this what it is. And I am really honored to be in the center of the world right now. I am, like you, an ultimate believer. I think it makes the world better. The fun of it is pure joy and happiness. And the way we play builds community, and great character. And so I work on it a lot. As Heather and described, we are going to have a switch up in the format tonight. On the way out, there are comment cards where you score us on whether we listen to you 1 to 10. But also where you can write comments. And I'd like you to focus on the various weighting of the time and attention given to different things and whether we got that right or not. Did we overreact and go too hard on the gender equity or the equity? I don't imagine we did, but you never know. So we need to hear from you on your way out. You could just say, hey, a little light on youth or whatever it is. We'll add all that up and make adjustments. The next thing that's going to happen, briefly, there's a schedule up here. I'm not going to bore you with reading the whole thing. We'll actually just do it. But the next thing that's going to happen is a video on the last 50 years. How did we get here? Framing up how we got here. Seattle, I know you could have your own video of the last 50 years that would be fantastic. But here's sort of the sport overall.
So we wanted to kick off by introducing the USA Youth staff who are here today. You mentioned we're both board members, and the staff members I'm going to introduce are Julia, who's in the back, and many of you probably met on your way in with introductions. Julia's the Director of Finance and Development for USA Ultimate, and Will, who has been a huge part of the sport for the last 15 years and building a lot of what we all have out here. And it's been really incredible to work with him over the last little bit. And Will DeGray is the Director of Competition.
I'm going to introduce Tom Crawford. And about 5 years ago, when Kyle was on the board, we made a decision to engage in the world of amateur sports, not just work on Ultimate. And we had a resume of a guy, we were looking for a CEO at the time, who had an incredible resume in sports. And our goals were 2 things. One is to get more growth, get out in the world of sports and see what we can learn. The other was to get our sport out into all the other sports, to see if what we're doing would make a difference out in the world of sports in general, maybe the world. And so we hired Dr. Tom Crawford. With no further ado, Tom's going to give us his perspective on what he's learned in the last 5 years.
Thank you, Henry. Thank you, Heather Ann. As you can see, we have a fabulous board. Thank you very much for coming out tonight. Really appreciate you taking the time. Know that everybody is busy. Cool setting. Thank you, Ren. This is a neat place to be. I heard there's some cool stuff happening.
One or two cool things.
All right. Congratulations on this. I'm going to go super quick tonight because one of the things we have learned is from the cities that we've been to is we don't want to talk, we want to listen. So I'm just going to provide some super quick context. And then I'm going to do one of the breakout sessions later. If anybody is interested in learning more about some of the structural stuff we've been working on, please just come to that breakout and you'll have lots of time to ask questions about that. Just want to see if anybody recognizes this music besides me. Wow. Compared to the other cities, that's a lot of hands. Hopefully I'm the only one in the room that actually recognizes it. So we just wanted to reflect really quick on our mission, which I know almost everybody is familiar with, advancing the sport of Ultimate. And our vision, that Ultimate's widely known, played, and respected as a sport that inspires athletic excellence and integrity among participants and fans. And then talk a little bit about some structural stuff. But before I get to that, if it's okay for Henry, I wanted to just tell you a little bit about why I am doing this. So I have had a really lucky life and have had an opportunity to work really across the full spectrum of sports for more years than I'd like to admit. Started actually in my early career working mostly with disadvantaged kids, really disadvantaged kids, using sport as a vehicle to teach them all kinds of things about life, and had amazing experiences doing that. And because of both how I grew up and the role that sports played in my life and those early experiences, I truly believe that sports, when done right, can enhance human existence in really powerful ways. And I've worked in sports, and I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. So I've been able to work at the Olympic Committee for a really long time, NFL franchises, NBA franchises, NHL franchises, seen it all. And I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. There's lots of good. There's also lots of ugly stuff that is really yucky when it comes to what sports can mean. And then I discovered Ultimate through a family member who always had discs around at our family events. And I went to one event, really didn't know anything about the sport. Despite all of that time I had spent, I didn't know anything about Ultimate. So I went to an event and I watched, and in one weekend, fell totally in love with the sport. Because what I saw was, first, amazing athletes, speed, quickness, agility, power, cognitive acuity on every play, play after play after play, all of the energy systems having to be used, intense competition, really intense competition, but in an amazing spirit of competition that I had never really felt in any of those other sports that I had been involved in. And I was like, wow, this is a beautiful sport, right? The way the disc is flying through the air and the athletes are blasting down the field and it all comes together, and it's just like, never seen anything like that. And I knew nothing about it. And so when I then got to meet some of the board members who impressed the heck out of me, I thought, I really want to try to go help this sport as much as I possibly can, because I believe that it can make a huge difference and has the opportunity to be really powerful. So what I've been trying to do in my role is help get rid of me's so that there are no more Tom Cruises in the world, and that all of the other people that are involved in sport can learn about Ultimate and discover what an amazing sport it is. And then the sport of Ultimate can become a very powerful influence on all those other sports. And here's the really good news: we're making fabulous progress, faster than I ever would have dreamed. Part of that is because we lucked out and been into the Olympic family. And I want to talk very quickly about that. This is the structure of sport that we kind of reside in now when I was working in. I'm trying. Very good. So here's what I wanted to talk about with the Olympic Committee and why it's helping us so much. In the United States Olympic Committee is not just a body that sends athletes to Olympic Games. It is actually the Ministry of Sport in the United States. And so all of these groups that you see up here are members of the Olympic Committee along with us. And when we interact now as part of the Olympic family, these are all of the groups that we're interacting with. And as I said, we're making great progress. So we have particularly youth-serving organizations that for the first time are saying, wow, this is a really cool sport. It's got some things baked into it that we want to teach kids about, like conflict resolution, treating each other with dignity and respect, even when you're competing against one another. It's really fun to play, and it's inexpensive. And so they are really embracing Ultimate, and we are going to be able to expose this cool sport to literally hundreds of thousands of kids through many of these organizations. The one right now I'm most excited about that's about to happen in 2 weeks is where the featured sport at the PAL National Conference, the Police Athletic Leagues. Anybody familiar with the Police Athletic Leagues? So PAL is a really cool organization that operates across the United States, and it's police officers going into communities where they want to develop a better relationship with the young kids in those communities so that the relationship between the police and the communities improves. They also like to help kids stay out of trouble. And they also try to teach life skills and values to the kids through the power of sport. They love Ultimate when they learned about it at the Olympic Congress. And we are now going to be the featured sport at the Police Athletic League Conference so that our sport is getting introduced in those neighborhoods all over the United States. And our goal is, by doing that by building out the structure, yeah, Henry, can we just blast over it? Building out the structures that we're building out through affiliates and state organizations, etc., that we are going to be able to link all of those youth-serving organizations that you just saw up there to the affiliates and the state organizations, and we'll get an influx of kids, and by the way, I really believe this, with a lot of diversity coming from these youth-serving organizations. They are operating very often in very diverse communities. And so this is going to be a great vehicle for us to get diversity at the youngest levels coming into our sport with other really high-quality organizations introducing Ultimate to those kids. That, to me, is the power of being in the Olympic family. If we get on the Olympic program at some point, that would be amazing, and it'd be a watershed moment for the sport. But that's not what's really valuable about being in the Olympic family. That slide that was just up there is what's really valuable. And it's going to lead to a lot of cool things for us. These are all of the groups that are going to help us make that happen, including all of you. The most important group here on this slide is you, the volunteers, the people that have spent all these years building, particularly in this amazing community, this sport the way you have. Thank you, and congratulations, because it is really incredibly impressive what you've done here in Seattle. And now we just need more of that second group up there. So time for some of you to quit playing this silly sport and coach, like I know in this community in particular, many, many, many of you do. And thank you for that as well. We're going to need a lot of coaches to coach those kids. The foundation, if you'd like to learn about that, how about if I do that in my breakout, Henry? And then finally, in the breakout, what we'll be talking about is, if you can go, is how we're building out these state organizations that are doing their own thing very entrepreneurially, but are also using and taking advantage of all of these programs that we have to try to deliver them all over their state. And we're going to add 3, 4 of these every year, providing a lot of funding, a lot of resources. It's going really well, and we're really excited about linking these groups to those youth-serving organizations that you just saw. I'm going to stop.
That's perfect. And so we're going to take 10 minutes now for questions specifically on how this structure impacts Seattle, how Seattle might want to integrate with that. So interaction between the Seattle Disc Northwest and this structure of amateur sports that we're now a part of. And we're only going to do 10 minutes on this because if you really want to get into more depth on it, you can go into Tom's working group later where you can learn and describe and talk for a half hour. But right now, if we could just do 5 questions if anybody has any about this structure or about how it impacts Disc Northwest. Yeah, Bunny.
Can you give an update on the USA Ultimate Foundation and how that fits into the structure and how that plays into what we do in Seattle?
Suppose I'll take it. Why don't you go ahead?
Okay.
This is the visionary behind the foundation is here. I was the president for a while. He actually knows what it is.
So the idea of the foundation is several things. One is we don't ever want to have, starting with kids, we don't want to have a kid not being able to play Ultimate because of economic challenges. So the foundation is going to raise funds outside of our operating budget so that we have a pool of money to create scholarship programs, which we already have, by the way, and build that up so that we can provide scholarships to kids around the country that want to play Ultimate and can't afford it. We can perhaps make sure, well, here's one of my dreams. We will never again have an athlete that doesn't try out for a national team because they can't afford to try out for the national team. Would really love to change that, and the foundation is going to help with that as well. So the foundation is going to be a separate 501c3, it already is, it's raising money, and then they'll develop a strategy to target specific programs. GUM is one, Play It Forward is another, the scholarship program for disadvantaged kids is another, and we'll funnel those monies back into the sport for those particular things. And we think we're really going to, now that we got rid of the past president, we think it's really going to flourish.
Thanks. Question number 2. Yeah.
My understanding from years ago of the relationship between the international federations and the national Olympic committees is that the Olympic Charter has the federations above the national organization, the USA Ultimate. So I'm wondering, is that a universally recognized relationship there among par on the second one, or is that something that's up for discussion?
Sit down, Avery. You really great. I just wanted to say hi. Thank you. So, yes, the way the structure works is that there's the International Olympic Committee at the top. And then under the International Olympic Committee sort of operates through the international federations and simultaneously the National Olympic Committees. Yeah, so they work with both, and we work with both. So it kind of goes this way and then this way down to us. And we work with both the US Olympic Committee and WIFDF. And WIFDF is right there with the Olympic Committees up to the IOC. I don't know if that answers. Okay?
You got time for 5 minutes here.
Well, I've heard a little bit about kind of what the state organizations will get by, in terms of resources from USAU. I haven't really heard much about sort of a governing structure and what it means in terms of local decision making for those states.
Great question. So our vision and the way we've rolled this out is we want to create entrepreneurial environments around the U.S. where they all look very different, because the way it's going to work in Washington is going to look totally different than the way it's going to look in Florida and the way it's going to look in California and New England. And so in some places we're creating regional organizations, like right now one of them is New England, because it became clear that to have each state, Rhode Island, Connecticut, Massachusetts, didn't make any sense. And now their board is deciding how that's going to work best. And all we say is, you got to be a 501c3, and we help you become a 501c3. And then you got to have a representative board. So, like for example, we don't want DISC New York to go from DISC New York to become the state organization and have their board made up of nothing but people from DISC New York. It's got to include Albany and Buffalo and Rochester and all of that. And after that, we just provide funding, advice, and a lot of support. But they can do that. We said we want them to do their own thing because we don't know how to make it work. So it's very entrepreneurial. Thanks. Sure. Yes.
So I'm crashing your guys' party a little bit because I'm important. But following on to the question that he asked is, 10 years from now, what is your vision for organizations that perhaps are not interested in joining the statewide organization? Where on the chart do we fall if Portland decides to just remain Portland and Portland metro region, and there isn't a state of Oregon affiliate?
Well, one option would be to be an affiliate instead of a state organization. The other option would be to have nothing to do with it. And you're obviously totally free to do that.
So in your vision is either we're affiliates or we're on our own?
No, I wouldn't say you're on your own. You're a local disc organization that we want to see thrive and grow, but we are going to work in order to scale the sport the way we want. We're going to work through the state organizations a lot because they're going to understand a lot more about what's going on locally than we are, and we want to help that thrive and grow however is best in that community. But we are going to try to put, where we're growing our best right now is where we have really good organizations in place. We track the growth, and we like the growth that we're seeing. We want to grow the sport. We want to get as many kids playing the sport as we possibly can. But are we going to say, good luck, we want nothing to do with you? No, absolutely not. We are responsible for trying to help everybody be successful in the sport in the United States. That's our responsibility.
So where does the membership to USAU come into the picture? Is like every affiliate event then sort of a driver to membership? Is a youth event something that drives membership to USAU? Is
Yes.
that sort of, so growing the sport, growing USAU aren't really mutually exclusive. They're sort of the same thing from...
Yes. Yeah. And we have a long way to go. One of the slides that we skipped through, there was an interesting one to show is when we look at ourselves relative to other sports that are growing really fast and doing really well, we have a huge upside opportunity. Right now, swimming, for example, has 350,000 members. Lacrosse, 400,000 members. Hockey, 1 million members. And we're pretty psyched about having 55,000 members, but we would love to have 300,000 and 1 million and be as big and as successful as those sports, because they've got literally hundreds of thousands of kids that are learning from their sport and they're growing very successfully, and it's through the kind of structure that Henry, I don't know if we're going over.
Yeah, we got 2 more minutes.
So what sort of resources or benefits will flow down to a Disc Northwest if they become affiliate or part of? Well, so a lot of programs, but I mean, can you be specific about what it means?
So for the first 3 years, it's money. So it's significant grants that go to the state organization and revenue sharing. So it's a combination of grants to get going, if you will, and then also not immediate revenue sharing. So the more members in the state, the more money flows back to the state. It's programs that we work really closely on. It's we help the organizations with legal fees to become 501c3s, with D&O insurance for their board so they can attract really good people to their board knowing that they have D&O insurance, a whole series of things like that. Yes?
Can you imagine the dues structure will be like, for example, a spring league player, someone who plays 8 weeks out of the year versus an elite player who plays all the time? That'll be kind of imposed or brought in with organizers.
Yeah, so the affiliates we have, Will, do you remember what it is?
Yeah, it's basically if you play locally and you're an affiliate member of the organization through that local association, your fees are, I think it's a third to a half, depending on if you're an adult or youth, versus a full membership. And if you start to play more broadly outside of the local area, then that's when the full membership comes in and you have access to all the programs around the country.
Sorry. So it's okay. There's going to be an Olympic dream breakout with Tom. You can go for like half hours. So we're going to move on to the equity discussion now. And this has all happened because of what happened in Minneapolis. In Minneapolis, we learned 3 things from Chip Chang. One is just me learning. I had to cut down the time, and I cut her out of the program. And she was mad, and I apologized, and then she was hurt, and didn't know why. And that is because I'm a white male, and I look out through my white male eyes, and I just didn't get it. that she felt pushed aside for white males. And, heard all night because of that, and I saw her sitting there mad, and if I'd recognized it, I would have been able to help out and not have her feel that way, because that wasn't actually happening, but boy, it felt like it was to her that. So the only reason I bring up that story is because I think a lot of us white males have a lot of learning to do, and I think it's a good example of that. I consider myself really sensitive, but I'm not. I can be really blind. So I'd rather not be that way. The other two things were great ideas that she had for us. One of which was that we had a problem that the equity group took all the equity thinking minds into one group out of the 6 groups, and so the other groups were all missing that. And I was running a semi-pro group, and we had one woman in there, which wasn't okay, because she was a little afraid to speak up because there was a bunch of reps. And it was like a tough group. And so we needed to not have that happen, and that was true of the other groups too. So we're gonna do the equity discussion first, and we're gonna do a half an hour on that, and then we're going to have all of us break out into the other 5 groups, so that equity thinking will get out into all those 5 groups. The other thing that she thought of that was a great idea is to have the inspirational speaker speak first, to crystallize in our minds what this issue is and remind us and get us alert to it and thinking about it before we go into that discussion, so we don't kind of arrive at the discussion going, oh yeah. So with that, we've got Hannah Kawai. Yeah.
You guys have to move over here. You guys have to come sit up front also. I'm not going to talk until this happens. You guys in the back are trying to keep this as least awkward as possible. Good job, everybody. Thank you. Yeah. Cool. I wrote a lot of stuff on my phone, so I'm going to be looking at my phone. I'll probably get lost at some point, so just, bear with me or whatever. But great. Also, the acoustics in this room are a little weird, so if you can't hear me, just give me an ear or something like that. Or if I mumble at the end of my sentences. So my name is Hannah. This is Chip Chang's version of, or my version of her speech. But if you haven't read her stuff on Twitter, it's really, really awesome, so check it out. I've played Ultimate in Seattle for 15 years, and I help run Age Up, all of our Everything Ultimate program, where we do a lot of work to lift up the leadership of young women of color through the sport and community of Ultimate Frisbee to build a movement for social justice, right? I also have coached for 7 years at Franklin High School. And it's one of my favorite parts of what I do as an Ultimate player. Yes. So I coach it in South Seattle. Seattle is a very segregated city. This is predominantly where folks of color live. So the majority, I think I have 2 white girls on the team this year. So it's a lot of young women of color from working class families. So that's the context that I'm coming from, right? And the world of Ultimate that I see is predominantly white. And I'm sure you guys have seen that also. And that's actually not true in South Seattle, right? So this is there's a really beautiful and meaningful community for a lot of young people who are from and whose families are from all over the world playing Frisbee in South Seattle. And I really believe that accessible public school programs have helped make that possible, right? So all the folks who've done organizing for that, pat yourself on the back. That being said, I coach 30 to 40 young people every year, 7 years, and I'd say I have 7 players who've played past high school. Okay, so that's 7 players who've gone on to play at college, gone on to play club, and it's really easy to say that the majority of my players will never have a USAU membership, right? And we can talk, I think, for a long time about all the visible ways that Ultimate might ostracize folks of color, right? So in college, I played on a team whose mascot was a black woman. We were Disco Inferno, right? One of the biggest tournaments in our sport is called Potlatch, and it's on native land. And we all know how hard it is to get to Ballard on 6 p.m. on the weeknight, right? But these are like, I think the easy answers, the easy sort of things to look to, and they aren't the reasons that most of my young people stop playing. So I just want to chat a little bit about the structural ways that Black and brown folks, particularly women, are not simply included but actually pushed out of playing, right? So for one, I think like sort of not just USAU, but just the emphasis overall in the sport on high-level college, club, and Olympics at the expense of investing in like public school programs. So I think that is where a lot of that good work is happening. The cost to play at college and club levels. The fact that the only free way to play is for men. USAU's lack of relationship and what feels like often a lack of trust in local Frisbee organizing bodies, and I think I appreciate the way you guys are talking about investing locally, but if we see this local organizing as the most sustainable way to build access and address these issues of access and equity, then obviously we want to be able to do that. I think another piece for me is thinking about the false narrative that Frisbee is apolitical, and I think reflects the fact that the white class privileged dudes are the most vocal base of the sport and also represented most among like high level coaches and leadership. Right? So I think that list can also go on. But I want to take a moment to think like why, like really why do we want this sport to be more equitable, right? And it's like not a rhetorical question. Like if our answer is yes, like we have a shit ton of work to do and it's gonna be really hard, right? And it's gonna hit people where it's hard, right? And we have to be ready for that. And I think for me, the urgency behind bringing an equity lens is not because I think brown people need Frisbee. It's just not true. We got a lot of things happening, all of them are great. Frisbee's pretty good too. I definitely want my players to have a choice about whether or not they continue to play. I think this has been a really powerful tool for community building, connection, healing, youth development, positive relationship building, social emotional growth, leadership, right? The list is like really long. And it's super meaningful to our young people, and yet like the overwhelming majority of folks that I coach and that I work with through HF stop playing after high school because it's not accessible, and more importantly, it's no longer meaningful to them. And so that's one piece of it, right? But I think actually for me, politically, like thinking more importantly, I think Frisbee contributes to this larger picture of like white isolationism and segregation in this world, in this country in particular. Like white people live, work, and play with white people. White people as a group are socially isolated, geographically isolated from the concerns and experiences and needs of communities of color. And that isolation is a key part of maintaining a system of white supremacy, right? And so I'm just like, white supremacy, you guys. You're like, oh, what did you do? Not me. Well, first of all, you don't get to decide if it's not you. That's for brown people to decide. Second of all, I want white people I know to like find those white people, right, and like hold them closer, hold them tighter, and hold them with like more love, because I think that is how we're going to get people to move on these issues. And Frisbee's been like a beautiful place for me to build relationships with people that I wouldn't have, that like maybe don't share my same value, don't share my perspective, and like that's where I've been able to start this work, right? Those relationships I think also highlight for me why local organizing and like person-to-person organizing is the most effective place to address all this stuff, a lot of this stuff. So I wrote down some recommendations, you guys. If you need your paper and pen, you can pull it out. So for USAU organization and staff, and this also goes for Just Northwest folks and actually everybody, first thing, work on your own shit always. So that means like regular anti-oppression training for staff and local organizers. We live in a racist world. If you don't work on your racism, your shit's gonna be racist. And with that, right, it's like a skill. It's something you can get better at, you can learn, practice, and make mistakes, right? Know that you're missing perspectives. For USAU, you're a national organizing body run by white dudes for the most part. So first, change that. But second, prioritize listening and not just listening to people who talk the most, because there's a small number of people that do that, right? But also find what voices are you missing. Do an equity analysis for all the policies you guys make. So think about how any policy might impact different communities. And the Seattle city government does this, and I think it's a pretty awesome start. My vote, if you're taking votes, you guys can dissolve the main office and then have satellite spots all over the country. And thinking about that as a way to build more meaningful relationships with Ultimate communities and to be more embedded in the complexities of local context, as you guys named, right? With regards to leadership, this goes for everyone. Think about the women and the folks of color in your life. What would it look like to listen to them more deeply, to back their leadership more fully, to bring their expertise into leadership positions at USAU and other places, right? We have super rad women organizers in Ultimate, Chip, Claire, Zara, Ha, Michelle Ang, and women-run projects, Ren Fitness, AJEP. The All-Star Tour without limits, like what would it look like to back these projects like more fully, right? Another pieces of this is like support racial and gender justice fights beyond the Ultimate world and in your home communities. Back fights for indigenous sovereignty, against gentrification, to abolish prisons and end police violence, to combat climate change. Bring that learning and activism back to Ultimate, right? Share honestly how scary and overwhelming this is, because shit is scary and overwhelming. And with that, work on healing yourself from ways you've been hurt by these systems, because we know that you've been hurt also. So lastly, invest locally, as I said before, but I'll say it again, invest locally in public schools, local competition, local sustainable coaching, local organizing. And that means financially backing folks who are organizing and coaching with women and girls in communities of color. Prioritize deep, sustainable community involvement over one-off clinics or tournaments. Cool? Cool. Great.
Thank you, Hannah. And thanks all of you for listening and opening your minds to hear what Hannah has to share. And hopefully we can use this as an opportunity to move into the next part, which is our opportunity to share and brainstorm together. Like Hannah said, a lot of these are going to be hard conversations, right? How do we make these things work? Where does sacrifice come in to kind of support all people? And that's really kind of what we're after. The big question we're trying to answer in this equity discussion section is, if we're a sport that stands for inclusion, then what does that look like in the strategic plan over the next 5 years? That's the big question. We've broken it down into a few smaller questions, and so we're going to split into 8 groups. We have 8 facilitators lined up to help facilitate that conversation. And in your group, you're going to have one question that pertains to that topic, and have a chance to kind of share ideas and brainstorm together. And then we're gonna come back together and just do a few quick highlights about what kind of came out of that discussion. So you're gonna have 20 minutes to do a brainstorm session. And hopefully we can start some of those hard conversations. I don't think we're gonna solve everything or anything in the night. That'd be pretty awesome, but I don't foresee that happening. But we're gonna start the conversation here, and we're gonna continue that conversation, and the conversation around equity is going to be kind of at the corner front of the things we discuss the rest of the night, and at the corner front of the strategic plan that we have moving forward. So if I can have facilitators just stand up, and we can make it easy and spread out around the room to help. So we have Luke Jesperson, we have Sam Terry, Kira's over there, off in the weight area, and then Will, Henry, myself, Tom, and Julia. So we are spread out throughout, and we're going to break into 8 groups, try to make them somewhat even on the fly, and we're going to brainstorm in those groups with one of those facilitators. So find a facilitator, and let's go.
And then we have one question that we're really going to focus on. I might be the only person with this, I guess. I couldn't quite hear that. I guess I'm the only one with this. So we have one question we're really going to focus on. But we'll go through all 5 of them, so we can all think about all 5 of them, and then we'll spend the majority of the time on just a single question. So, first of all, yeah, let's go around and say our name and what brought us here. Or should we just say names so we can get out of here? I'm Luke.
Ellie.
Sam. Zach.
Lauren. Abby.
Mike.
Lily, Eddie, Sarah, Ren,
Dan, Elliot. I'm Mike. I'm Bill. Cool. Awesome. First, I really I have this sheet that's going to frame our question. Has everyone seen this photo before of the difference between equality and equity? Does anyone want to take a stab at kind of just what this means to them, this difference between equality and equity, so we all kind of can start thinking in these terms?
So equality is that everyone ostensibly has the same chance to interact with something or see something, but because of their situation, they have different levels of access to it. Equity means creating structures to help even out the accessibility and make it so that everyone can actually participate equally in something. So it's about the systems and about addressing underlying issues in our society that cause different groups to be advantaged or disadvantaged. That's my
in my work, I work in a developmental preschool that focuses on children with disabilities, but alongside children who are typically developing. And so in my line of work, we talk about it as equality is everyone getting the same thing, and equity is everyone getting what they need.
Sweet. So, yeah, all these questions are sweet. We have one star that is going to be kind of our responsibility. We'll go for that first. Our question is, how do we educate ourselves and our communities to be allies? That's our question. For me, I'll just begin. The team that I play for mainly is all white people, and we are kind of all we often generally reach out to, or I will reach out to a few and be like, I need to learn this perspective, or I reach out to a person of color, what's this like, and that's not the other person's responsibility. And a lot of our responsibility, personally speaking as a white male, is to be in positions where I am learning and to challenge other white males often, and learn from one another and to challenge one another and not put more burden on other people to, as kind of said it, figure out my shit. And we're all in a different background there. So to be an ally, or you could be a part of some oppressor groups or oppressed groups, but to be a part of our community, how do we? What are good ways that we can figure out our own shit and be good allies? Frisbee in the context of life. That's our big question.
Can we frame it in terms of what communities that we're looking to be allies with, or overall, how are we? Who are we being allies to? Is I guess.
Totally. That's
Who needs help?
Yeah. Who needs help? Where do you see them? Do you see somebody out there who needs an ally? Right? I mean, I think it's situational, right? I mean, we carry it around with us, right? But it oftentimes turns up as situational. Something's happening at a practice. Somebody's really kind of upset, and you don't maybe know why. Maybe it's not necessarily appropriate to ask, but just to sit there and try to figure out why the hell they're so pissed off. it's just maybe a really worthwhile first step. It's like, is that person, you know, why is that person having an issue? And, you know, it's because I don't necessarily get it, because I'm, you know, a standard white guy, but I can see somebody being upset, and I can try to figure it out. It's like, oh, maybe they need help. I didn't get it.
I mean, if we frame it as some of the things that Anna was saying earlier, it's that there are certain communities that aren't necessarily able to reach out and say, hey, these are some of the resources we need, or this is why we're representing, or what it's going to take to kind of develop some of these programs in our high schools. And it's, maybe it's providing that access to reaching out and just saying, hey, this is available, and then going out there for yourself into those communities to say, hey, there are more resources available. Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably the starting point.
I think one thing that I've been trying to do is to, rather than asking groups that I feel like could more eyes or like be a better highlight, rather than asking them to come to an event that I'm doing or come to my space, that it's kind of challenging myself to sort of meet them where they are and to their space. So one example of one of the things that I've done recently is creating a gender equity discussion guide. But oftentimes I think we end up in the discussion sort of the choir, right? Like the same people show up to all of the different events. And so one of the challenges for my group was to meet people who wouldn't show up to those events and talk to them about gender equity. And so for us it was, trifle, pamphlets were handed out to people. But I think in some ways we can do much better. I think sometimes as organizers we can become frustrated and say, well, I'm giving them all these opportunities. Like I want people to come and engage, but we're trying to do it on our own.
Kelly's a part of this awesome women's team called 77 Cents in Seattle, and they play in the mixed spring leagues, or mixed winter league as an all-women's team. And so I kind of see. So at the end of the game or at halftime, like facilitate discussion with the other team about how the women and men play together and how the women feel playing on a team like that. Having kind of a general discussion, during our major games, so kind of challenge people on the power dynamics inside of their team.
I think one of the things that's really important is education in general, educating ourselves. So I work for a school, and diversity and inclusion has been a really big part of the school's mission. And so much so that we've hired somebody to help us along this path in terms of pointing out ways in which we need to examine this in general. It's been an interesting road for me, examining, as you put it, my own shit. So the other aspect to this is that I'm a woman in high tech. So I've been seeing it from a couple of different perspectives. But, so being able to like relax and lean into the discomfort of realizing how I've been benefiting from the systemic issues that we've come to know and love has been really an interesting process, and being able to like even sit in front of all of you and open my mouth is a step in that direction, right? The other thing that I think is really important is being able to promote and encourage people of color to be in positions where they're seen in leadership, so that there are other people of color who can be seeing people of color in leadership. And I see this as a teacher. I see this as a software engineer. I see this as the advisor of the Frisbee team. As we're working with our captains, who are the captains? Why am I constantly pushing when I have a co-ed team to make sure that the boys have a girl captain there, even though they may be younger? I think it's important that the girls see that there's a girl in position of leadership, right? It's my responsibility as somebody who is the adult in the room, teaching these youngsters who are hearing all this stuff. That's part of the process, right? And we kind of have to eat our own dog food. It's like, okay, well, if we're telling the girls, the captains, that they need to have some gender balance in their leadership, we should be having gender balance as well in our leadership.
Randy's been doing a really badass thing lately of just hashtag you can't be what you can't see, and kind of just like showing up Ren's Fitness and then being these badass trainers. And it's really cool. Yeah, it's totally true. It's Other things are just, fundraise within your community for groups like Game Job. Just should we bop into a few other questions?
I feel like I have one more thing to say, just one thing about that, and that's that as important as it is to not require people of color and disadvantaged people to help us with our own shit, it's so important to listen to them and to ask them what they need help with. It's so much more important than just writing them a check or saying, USA US scholarships, you can just apply for one. Because you don't know the circumstances. I think that a lot of times people give well-meaning, well-intentioned kind of energy towards people of color of these groups, and we're just kind of tone deaf. And so, like, thinking about starting by asking questions and saying, what are you working on? Like, do you have any fundraisers coming up? Or like, how can I help signal boost? Or, if you have privilege, how can you get involved with people in a way that lets you use the privilege that you have to leverage them and help bring them up. But you have to ask them what they want, I think, otherwise it's just, then I'm just doing something and feeling good about myself because I did this great thing for them and they're like, what's the point? It's not really being
next year at our next event.
Yeah, exactly. It's not being a real ally.
I kind of want to stick with this. I don't really have anything to add, mostly because I play in the division for male-identified players. Up until this year, I played semi-pro, which is only for male players. I play for a team that requires you to have money in order to travel for tournaments. I'm like the quintessential privileged dude who gets to do all these great things. So I don't really want to talk, and I don't want you to perceive my silence as disinterest in this topic. I want to know what other people think, and I don't want to put people on the spot, whether it's people who identify as women or people of color. I do want to hear other opinions other than my own, because I won't lie, when I read Chip's piece, I had trouble relating to it because I just don't understand. So I came here to learn, and I don't want to talk, but I do think this is a really important conversation, and I would be really interested to hear what everyone thinks about this. Whether it's how do we have equity in terms of playing, in terms of coaching, in terms of whatever. I'm really interested in hearing what you want to say.
Let's
I think one important thing about the whole ally thing is that you can't self-identify as being an ally. Like, it's not up to you to say, oh, I am an ally for whether it's gender equity or whether it's for representing minorities or people who aren't of your same-sex orientation. You don't get to say that. Like, they can say, oh yes, so-and-so is acting as an ally, but it's not your position to self-declare that. So it's you earn that by your actions rather than just putting on a safety pin or something like that. That doesn't really get you there. So yeah, in the conversation, we just don't go, oh, we want to be allies and we want to identify as allies. It's, well, have the actions speak for themselves. That's
On top of that, I think that one thing that I've been really working on for myself is that being an ally is a verb. It's not an adjective, right? So, in order to be an ally, I need to show up and I need to do the work. And likewise, I get frustrated when I see particularly male teammates who I think of themselves as allies, but you say, hey, let's go to that it's matter work. And there's something that you can't go. And you say, okay, well, there's this cool gender equity talk, and there's something you send them an article, you don't read the article. And there's like all these levels of things that if you're going to think of yourself as an ally, you need to be doing the work.
How many of us read the Chip Chang piece that was on the site? I read it today.
I not only read it, but I posted it when I posted to my group about coming to this, and I encouraged people to read it before coming to this. Because I thought it was valuable, and I was glad that they did something about it.
Another kind of allyship that I kind of want to touch on is accepting criticism. That too often, I first experienced this giving criticism again to male teammates and having them being really angry, right? You come up and say, hey, you looked off that woman's header, and there's like this flash of anger, which makes women, and myself in particular, coming from sort of an abusive background with my family, to not want to speak up against it, right? And so I think, and then I, in return, later on in my development, when I've been approached about things surrounding race, like for 77 Cents, our first year we focused very much on gender, and then for our second year, someone said, hey, you're not really addressing race in all of this. And your first reaction, right, is this defensive, like, no, I have good intentions, I want to do good things, but to sort of step back and say, okay, you're right, we did talk about that, and that was a mistake. Now what can we do to do better? But being able, I think, if men in this group are wanting to know how to be allies, or white people are wanting to know how to be better allies, I think that that's, for me, a really big step, is being able to take criticism and listen to that wholeheartedly, reflecting on that.
Yeah, it was actually pretty impressive, USAU, because making a really late pivot in the format of this meeting, I thought was really cool. And also as early as like today, they were talking about it being a gender equity discussion, and that gender equity, everything was around gender equity. And Heather Ann and I were both like, this actually needs to be about equity and diversity, and not just gender equity, because there's so much more that's really, really important here. And they actually did listen and said, okay, like, yes, you're right, and we will shift again. And I was like, all right, that's pretty cool. So, there's hope, y'all. Cool.
Is that why you're going this way?
Lower barriers.
Lower barriers to entry. That's a good start. Let's start with that. What are the barriers?
Access. So, I don't know. I grew up in Pittsburgh. I was 45 minutes away from where the fields were. I mean, they're not good.
Cost, existence of teams, like especially at the level.
So cost, access to fields, access to coaches, and
kind of or evangelists of the sport as well, like lack of access.
Access to evangelists.
I guess I'm curious, what do you think right now USAU is doing to enhance inclusion, or where do you feel like as a woman, do you see it?
I'm meant to be listening.
Okay.
and I'm already 2
I just
bullets
don't-
behind.
Okay.
So it was access to fields and access to evangelists, but there were 2 other really good ones. Cost. Yeah, that was the first.
I think it's just that I might not know what you do. You know,
So
sometimes
then how
I
do you
don't.
know
I
what
don't.
we should?
That's
Yeah.
what I'm saying. It's hard for me to
We're gonna
answer.
do whatever you tell us.
So I don't know.
Cost specific transportation for one thing.
It's also saying sort of specifically, what do we do in our daily work to be a leader? Yeah.
I think you're going to have to pull your communities and find out what they need. Because it could be different. And that could be daily for a really long time.
I think on a daily basis, and also to be a leader in sport rather than someone like a sport that's trying or like.
Because all sports are probably trying, and we actually want to lead it.
Yeah, so to be a leader and on a daily basis, I think that there can't be any exceptions, and you really have to prioritize. You really have to prioritize access and equity, and not just prioritize, one type of equity over another, or one type of symbol of equity. It has to influence all of our decisions.
And what would be all the types of equity that we should be thinking about?
Well, a big one that has been referred to here is gender equity, but that can't come at the expense of racial equity or socioeconomic, class equity. There are disparities in sexuality, expression of gender, and those are all areas.
So does that just boil down to gender and socioeconomic, or is there more to it?
No. I'd say racial is a big one.
Age?
Age is a little bit different, I think, but I think it spreads through.
Yeah,
So more than gender and socioeconomic, what else is there in terms of equity that we might not be thinking about?
Say that again.
So we've got gender and socioeconomic, but is there what other type of equity?
And under gender, you have the new sexual identity, which is
right.
And sexuality.
And our sport in the mixed divisions is an odd number, so you end up with an automatic disparity of equity of opportunity there. With 4-3, how do you adjust to gender fluidity for that? Divisions are based on gender.
So prioritizing equity, all types, and I guess you're saying prioritizing every day. If the idea is if we want to lead this, which is what we want to do, we need to at headquarters prioritize this every day and be thinking about it every day. And what else should we do?
So do you mean that every decision has to go through that lens?
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to put it.
So if you're working on the highest levels of competition of the sport, and you're looking at an open division that's probably predominantly male, white male, how does that change? How does that change how the board's making decisions? I mean, why equity? Is it because it's the right thing to do? Is it because it's the moral imperative? Is it because that's what the membership wants? I mean, is it just to check a box, or is it a real kind of thing that people are willing to change the sport, change the ratios of the sport, make it an even number of players, change some of those
So the
things?
question is, how much do the members want?
When we set up the mixed division, we made it, because the sports played 7-on-7 and we wanted it to be mixed, we let the team on offense choose the gender of the 7th person if that's still what's going on. And the reason was so that there could be a strategic reason to have 4 women and 3 men on the field. And that was by embedding that into the system, it was like having an equity lens on the structuring of a whole new division in terms of gender at that time. And we already are the only sport worldwide that has the same exact rules for all genders. In terms, mixed women's division and men's division play by the same administrative structure, the same exact rules. We don't have to do a lot to be a leader because we already are in that. I know there's all the other things too that are equally important.
But I think in that way we're also really amazingly positioned to kind of be different than all the other kind of patriarchal structures, right? I mean, and when the men's game gets emphasized over the women's game in terms of resources or press or attention, then I think we're doing a disservice. So whatever you can do to emphasize all divisions.
And having represented all flying disc sports in the International Olympic movement 15 years ago, that was the selling point, and it is super strong already. So we're there already. And I want to mention one other thing before and that's avoiding conflicts of interest. The International Olympic Committee loves Ultimate because it's mixed and because we have good governance compared to other sports worldwide. In good governance, we take that for granted, but specifically avoiding conflicts of interest, especially when it comes to awarding bids for big events, for example, making sure that newcomers have equal access to those high-profile things is critical.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and answer now. But some of the things we're doing, we're trying to get the board to be completely gender neutral, and then every committee and all the leaders of all the committees complete gender neutrality. So those are things we're working on internally.
When you say neutrality, you mean even numbers.
Yeah. So should the concept of equity say that we actually should overweight it to be more females than guys, to try and make back some of the ground, essentially, that has been lost through male dominance over the last tens of thousands of years.
Are you talking about the order?
Yeah, so it could be everyone. Literally, we could go all the way to where we have more coverage of women, we have more resources for women. We already do that, and we have a gun program and it's girls and knockouts. So there's more programs aimed at women. But we could really, the board could be 8 women, 4 guys. The committees could be that way. We could really force that. And we could do that. The directors, and so Joey Gray was a former director of EPA, and it was mainly women for years, you and then Sandy Hammerly. And the board chairman was female most of the time. Mike Payne was a long sequence as a guy, but other than that, it was Kate Bergeron.
How we get back to that or maintain it. I would love to talk about
I just want to know if people think that we should literally just go overboard and make it like 8-4 for a while to try and gain back, some of the ground that's been lost to male dominance, basically. I mean, would people be in favor of that?
This sounds like a band-aid. You're just like, I'm going to adjust the number of people who are asserting something, and this will be fixed. But I don't think that's what this question is asking me personally. The question asks me, how do we do this? Like, how do we make equality for all these things happen? It's not just male-female. It is the socioeconomic. It is the social. It is the racial. Like, those are the things we're trying to answer. It's not just adjusting the number of people on board. You need their voices.
Yeah.
You need the community involvement of whatever you're trying to do.
I would say, even with reference to gender, I don't think that we don't need to do anything else, or that just because we are a sport that can be played mixed or has women in it, that's enough. The reason we have inequity in terms of gender is because there are fewer women playing, and that's why those programs for at the youth level, girls playing exist. And so I think looking at it from the perspective of like how many people should be put on the board to address this is looking at it the wrong way, but looking at it from, like, for example, media coverage, we're not asking like how many women's games do we have to cover per men's game to, right, the inequities in the past or imbalances in the past. The reason that we push for more women's coverage now is because it can draw more women into the sport and because people, there's more representation there.
Got to add to that as well. It seems like that quotas are like a really blunt instrument for a very nuanced problem, in that instead of looking at something like quotas or something like being very process oriented, like our lenses or any of those sorts of things, when it comes to decision making. And then if you do those parts right, the numbers will follow. You don't need to start with the quotas and then make those the target.
Even though it's already part of
And to be fair, I don't think any of us are saying USAU, you're like terribly inequitable. Like, we appreciate the work that's been done. There's just so much further to go, right?
So I work on NOMCON, which is the nominating committee, and I beg people like you to join the board. And I beg a lot more women than I beg guys. And I'm not sure it wouldn't be better to go 7, 5, or 8 on the board.
I think it's just like, think about it. I mean, every decision, you're hearing the equity lens thing. It's like you need to be considering all of these issues every time you make a decision. It has an impact on players around the country. So have those voices in the room, absolutely, but also just make sure that it's at the forefront of that process.
Right. It's what the people are thinking, not their gender.
It's both.
Having an equity lens on who the organization partners with in terms of sponsors and other peer organizations. And an example in sport would be the basketball opting not to hold their championships in a state that discriminates, things like that.
It's also not just the board, right? It's also staff, right?
Yeah.
So let's not limit the discussion to where improvements can be made.
Yeah, I think that was like the negative reaction towards, you talk about like fixing it, just simply changing the number of women on the board isn't going to fix it. I think everyone would agree that that is a positive change that would help, and even to your point that having more women than men in some ways would be a positive change in that like it's setting the trend for what you want to do elsewhere. It's more that it can't stop there. I think getting more specifically into like organizational roles and financial resources that are invested in expanding the diversity of the sport in these local communities, like that would be a specific thing that you could add that would actually increase diversity by reaching out to communities that don't have Ultimate currently, probably diverse communities that would have the financial and the time, personnel and time investment to be able to do that would be like in addition to the board changes.
So that police action would be a place where we can invest.
Right.
And that would, I think, directly affect diversity. If we help fund that, that would happen. Now, that's your dues dollars that we're spending to do that. Right. So we kind of need permission to do stuff like that, although we do sometimes.
I think every kid of every different everything is going to a public school. Except for maybe some private schools, but I think a lot of the gender and racial equity, I think public schools are a huge lever for that. And access to fields and coaches and buses is a big thing. Kids can't stay after school if they can't take a bus home, if they can't get a ride home, and coaches. So Seattle is growing a huge public school oriented youth movement. I have more girls on my elementary list right now than boys. But there's a couple of them that won't play because they can't get a ride. We've got one kid who's getting a ride to the games from another parent, but there's no sort of lever for that. There's no way for me to recruit a kid and
say, oh yeah, we got a bus for you. I have to find a parent and do some other things.
Is that happening? And other sports have that bus, right? Is that true?
Yeah, I mean, it costs money. It costs money.
But the school pays for that.
But I think also that your organization, at being a membership-driven, dues-driven organization, and the foundation being separate, but I think you need to have a development department that is raising money in other ways than just the dues. And I also think that people be more...
That is what the foundation is intended to be.
But it's a kind of a separate entity. I think, you know, I'm a dues-paying member now, but for many years I wasn't. It was just because I did the CDP. I think people pay their dues because they want to do an event or they want to go to a coach's workshop, not because they're feeling like they're supporting a bigger mission.
Got it. Trent, was diversity a thing at Radnor? Trent is from Pennsylvania, where I'm from, and went to Radnor High School and kicked my kid's ass. Flick was unbelievable. But that's not what we're here to talk about. But it was a pretty white place, right? I mean, I don't remember your team having much diversity other than you, right?
No, Radnor now has a pretty large Asian American population. So specifically the Ultimate team. For me individually, probably only like African American, half African American person I play with on a regular basis. I individually grew up in a relatively middle class white socioeconomic background, which does pose its own unique considerations of like my racial identity versus people around me. But I was, I grew up in a good environment. It didn't impact me too much.
What is it like, Chip, whose description is pretty poignant around not thinking Asian American women were athletes. She just didn't think Asians were athletes because where she grew up they weren't. Were you ever in that boat where you felt like there were no black athletes, right? And so there wasn't anybody that you like, what you can't see, you can't be. Did that affect you? Were you like there going, there's no real athletes out here?
No, I think it was the opposite. Like people like Ken Porter, people know who Ken Porter is. When I was a kid, KP used to play in North Carolina and ring African American player. I never really knew him or spoke to him at all, but I couldn't help but look up to him when I was a kid.
So it was there, just there weren't many.
I'm a big believer in the can't be what you can't see thing. I experienced that right on. Like I still think I would personally would have been okay if I didn't have goals like that, but I can see how instrumental that would be for both young women and people of racial minorities to have people in positions like on the board and in playing positions that you can visibly see them having power and owning their role and responsibility of a kid. I think that's so important.
So you didn't need it, but you think in general it's a good thing to have.
I definitely benefited from it, and I think a lot of people benefit.
Thanks. All right. Well, thanks everybody. Does anybody have a comment that they would like to make to the group when we all get back together? Really, I'd love it if you'd say something. Just representing. Well, you were the one who brought up access to the fields, the evangelists, the cost of transportation early on, and your other thing was prioritizing equity all the time in all types of things. And I think it would be good to be able to hear that from you, not me. If Heather were to go around the room and just pick a few people. I thought you spoke really freely about this. Would you mind? And Joey, you guys have
one more issue, I think, is that in the 90s, there was a lot of research nationwide done on the importance of recreation programs for dealing with some of that at-risk behavior, and that we, as an organization, if we're focusing on prevention of the issues, like we support parks and recreation departments and parks and recreation funding in cities across America, rather than having that be a police thing. And maybe we could have kids who play Ultimate teach the police about the spirit of the game.
By the way, when Joey says some idea like that, she actually makes these things happen. There is a mixed division because of this. So it is not just an idea. All right, thanks.
The hot topics or the things that you came up with in your group. We're just going to do this for a couple of minutes so that we can get a gauge on what was talked about in the room, so that everyone has some different questions. Here's that.
So what happened in our group was that, or I kind of, my takeaway from our group was that everyone here is well-intentioned and wants to, you know, promote the same things in our sport to come to the same result. But honestly, when we were talking or when we were being asked questions, a lot of the time it seemed like we were being asked about how to provide a stop to like a problem, a specific problem or a specific like image thing regarding equity. And like for example, we were asked about, you know, would it make a difference if we had more female board members? Like, would that be a solution? And I think like asking questions about those specific kind of like image or Band-Aid things aren't really, you know, working towards equity and intersectionality at the root. And we talked a little bit about how in order for a root change to happen, we have to have better access and more representation from women, people of color, people from different socioeconomic classes, different sexualities, different gender identities, etc. And so that kind of starts with like, you know, who makes up our sport. I also think that something to note is that it's not enough to, we talked about how we should be applying this kind of thought to each decision that we make. And so instead of asking, you know, or trying to like scramble for a solution or think about like, oh, do we have a board or a group of people who take care of something like this? Like we should be applying the lens of equity, all types of equity, to each decision that we make and that USA Ultimate makes.
Any other groups have ideas or conversations you want to share?
Our question was, how do we foster and support equity and diversity at both the local level and also at a national level?
Could you stand up? Or stand up? Just so we can hear better. Thank you.
So our question was, how do we support and foster equity and diversity at a local level and also at a national level? So I started by posing the question to our group about how many people had participated in an anti-oppression or equity training through Ultimate, and out of our entire group, 2 people had, and that was through Age Up. And then I asked how many people had in general, and I think 4 of us had out of our whole group, which is pretty dismal. And so we talked a lot about like starting with the youth that we're teaching things to. Like if you have a coach that's teaching mixed ultimate to a young child and they don't have an education about equity or oppression, is that really a good place to start? So people need to be engaging in those trainings before they're coaching, before they're high-level players that are using their voices in what could potentially be a harmful way. We also talked about the fact that there are other things to do other than monetary, and that in our world there are systematic biases that our youth encounter every single day. So giving youth a scholarship to play Ultimate is awesome, but if someone has to choose between going to an after-school program where they're offered tutoring services and a meal, and that meal is the only meal that they will get to eat before they return to school the next day for free breakfast, then who is going to choose going to Ultimate if there isn't food there, if there isn't someone who's going to help them with their classes there, if they can't transport themselves, if their parents can't find childcare for their other children? And so those systematic barriers need to be addressed now, and it needs to be part of the conversation in ways that are more than just monetary. And I think it's really great. I can't remember, it was Tom who said he doesn't want a single person to not go to a tryout for nationals because they can't afford it. But let's be honest, like they're not going to get to that spot. They're not even going to be able to try out if they already have these blocks for years and years and years. And that exists right now, and we need to acknowledge that and do something about it.
We can have 1 or 2 more share ideas, and then I want to make sure I get notes paper. Please make sure you give me your notes from your group so that we can write this off. Yeah.
right, my group's question was, as a national governing body, what needs to happen in our daily work to be leaders in sports in terms of inclusion? My group had a number of things to say. I'll go through, try to be quick. First thing that was said was just ignore white males. Diversity in leadership, both in terms of our national governing body, but other organizations that are involved with Ultimate at the local level. Specifically to the daily life, bringing an equity lens, a mechanism to determine equity to all the policies and all the decisions that get made. That's something that Hannah said earlier as well. And thinking about inclusion in the way that we listen and engage and how visible we are with the listening and engaging to the rest of the community. Yeah. We
have time for one more.
Okay, hi. Our group was talking about honoring the gender equity commitment with USAU's existing policies. One of the things we brought up early was about this emphasis on youth ultimate, and kind of going along with what Hannah was saying too. The first thing that got brought up was anti-sexism workshops starting in elementary school. We do a lot of the gum clinics, we do a lot of the play it forward stuff, and how many of those include conversations about gender equity with kids starting from that young age. And then how do we continue that view as kids mature through high school, a lot of times just based on, not even in their ultimate, but in just being high schoolers, they lose that sense and they stop interacting co-ed or respecting each other. And so potentially including some kind of part of the USAU membership, you have to sign your waiver, you have to pay your dues, you have to do all this stuff, you have to do a training for people of all levels, and there can be curriculum based on their age. We also talked about USAU with equity versus equality. So right now I think USAU is trying to go from its unequal state to equality. But we talked about Ulti-World and the pro leagues and all of these other very prominent aspects of ultimate culture and community that should USAU be doing equity and making up for those differences as well. So highlighting women more than the other divisions or other genders or whoever, because they're not getting highlighted in other very prominent parts of our lives. Then another idea was also with these Olympic family organizations that he brought up, using those in order to access girls and try and talk to them about doing this gender equity work as well, because we talked about today how not only does Ultimate need this, but our whole country outside of sports also needs work on this.
Thank you, everyone. Please make sure you get your notes papers to me, those newspaper notes, so I can compile those all and capture all those ideas. We're going to move into the next part now and take this equity lens that we've developed in these conversations with us moving forward. That's about Henry.
Yeah. Okay, so now we're going to break out into 5 groups, and like Heather Ann is saying, you need to bring the gender equity stuff with you in each of these groups. And they are branding. The question we're looking to answer is, what are the challenges to USA brand and how can we address them? And really, what do you want USAU brand to stand for? Youth structure, what are the best investment opportunities in Youth Ultimate that will ensure competitive opportunities, continued growth, and retention into adulthood? So Heather Ann is going to be leading that one. The branding one will be led by Julia. Boom, good. Elite level play, what should elite level competition for players and fans look like in the future? How do we want that to look 5 years from now? Should it be mixed? Should it be rep? What should it be? And Will be leading that one. Then there's semi-pro. What are your thoughts about our stated policy? I'm going to go through our current policy and how do we like it? How do we like how that's playing out? Do we want to change it? So that'll be me. I'll be over here. And then we've got Olympics. We're pursuing an Olympic dream. How much should we prioritize it in our budget? And what sacrifices should we be willing to make? Okay. Tom will be leading that. Why don't you lead that here? So we've got that here. You've got semi-pro over here. Where do you want to go? So far corner is youth structure. And then Julia, back over there, okay, by Julia is going to be branding. What does USA brand stand for? Yeah.
Before we start, Ren has some of the handouts that were written by the Gender Equity Action Group, which is questions to help with that equity lens. So
This is from the Sky article that was written by the Gender Equity Action Group, which also has a lot of questions and things that deal with equity and diversity on a broader level, not just gender equity. So I just printed out a bunch of them. There's some that are floating around. So I would love it if everybody could make sure there were at least a couple people in each of these groups that had this kind of cheat sheet, just to make sure we're asking the right questions and carrying this conversation forward into the breakout groups.
I will try very hard to connect so you all can hear me. I'm going to just go through kind of the framing for this particular discussion on youth structure, and then we'll jump into the conversation around that. Different than what we did with the equity breakout groups, at the end of this we're going to be writing some of our big ideas on the big board, so we'll have an opportunity to do that and get back to share some. So the current youth structure at USA Ultimate has evolved immensely over the past 15 years. Currently, there are two arms of youth focus. One's focused on competition, and the other is focused on outreach. So competition is things like YCC, youth state championships. Outreach are the things like GUM and the Learn to Play clinics, and things that are focused in that area. Getting players to play as opposed to creating high-level playing opportunities. One of the big shifts was that this was developed to support the growth of youth movement in different scenes across the country. Some places are just starting, so outreach is needed to build the scene. Places like Seattle have a robust youth scene and need to figure out ways to foster competition at the highest level. So consider the different communities in the country are at different stages of development, and we need a structure that's going to serve all of these communities well. We want to support communities in an equitable fashion that also drives growth and development. So we're thinking about growth, we're thinking about development, we're thinking about competition. There's a lot of different balls in the air in this conversation. We want really to see our youth continue to play Ultimate into adulthood. How we structure Youth Ultimate and the opportunities that our youth players are connected to have an impact on our ability to retain players. There's a few different types of Ultimate communities that we want to consider in this discussion that we're about to have. There's USAU affiliates with sustainable and robust youth programming that have that even before they become an affiliate. There's USAU affiliate programs that have some youth playing and are working to develop youth programming. There's independent organizations with sustainable and robust youth programming. I think this Northwest is a pretty clear example of that. There are independent organizations that are working to develop Youth Ultimate youth programming. There's also communities without organizations that have some Ultimate opportunities for youth. So areas that are adult dominant Ultimate, but they occasionally have some youth play. Communities that only have adult Ultimate opportunities, those exist as well. And then also communities that don't have any Ultimate. So keeping all of these different communities in mind as we discuss the path forward for Youth Ultimate is a lot to keep in mind, and it's what makes a lot of the conversation at the national level really challenging, and trying to trickle that out to kind of more state-based focus. So the big question we have to answer tonight as a group is what are the best investment opportunities in Youth Ultimate that will ensure competitive opportunities, continued growth, and retention into adulthood. So we're after competition, we're after growth, and that retention of Ultimate players. So how can USA Ultimate invest in opportunities in Youth Ultimate to achieve those things? And if there are things we're missing on that list, just make sure we're bringing those into the conversation. All right, that's our starting point. Yeah. Yeah, just jump right in.
One way to do that would be bring next the regional championships. Having one for central, everything like that. Having one option.
national tournament. I think they've definitely
Caustic?
failed to go.
I can't hear you. I can't hear you.
I'll recap.
Okay.
I'll try to recap.
Okay. Thanks.
So I'm saying that I think Westerns, Southerns, Easterns, Central should come back because I think it branches out to a lot more teams than just one national tournament that costs thousands of dollars to attend. You can't drive to it, you have to fly to it, and it eliminates some players who maybe could go if you could drive, obviously, money, and like starting programs developed are not aware of the tournament maybe, or maybe discouraged from going because of the cost of the like intensity of it. So I think bringing Westerns and other regional tournaments back.
The quick recap on that is bringing back regional-based tournaments at the high school, at school, not club-based, so school-based regional competition.
I think the add-on to that is also that the fact that the nationals, you have to have a bid, so you have to get invited to it. So places that are like starting out already, they don't get that chance to play that type of ultimate, and along with like the timeline, especially for Seattle public schools, like Franklin isn't going because they basically gave us a month to fundraise thousands of dollars to fly out to Chicago. Like that's completely unrealistic for us. So our girls don't have that chance to play that type of level of ultimate at all because of money.
Yeah, on top of that, Nationals isn't even a USAU event, so I think the USAU replacement for the regional tournament is a club invitational in Spokane next fall, which is just knowing anything about girls ultimate in Washington State. You know, it's completely ridiculous because the girls season is in the fall or in the spring, and so like what team are you going to be sending in November? And in Spokane is ridiculous. Like that's super far away, and so I talked a little bit about this earlier. But that's part of, from what I understand, USAU's push to move high school ultimate to a club-like setting, which I just, in my opinion, ultimate isn't ready for, especially in girls. There just aren't enough people playing, and especially with the way high school sports are set up, it is so much easier to start playing ultimate at your school if your friends play, if your schools have facilities, if your schools have relationships with fields and other teams, as opposed to trying to hear about a new club, trying out for that, not knowing anyone on the team. That's a really scary experience, especially for young girls who have never played a sport before. So I think hearing about the moving toward club-based ultimate really worries me for the high school level, because I think that's going to, not even to mention the cost barriers for all players, that's just completely unrealistic. I just think it's going to shut out more players than it would create opportunities for.
I'd like to back up what Jason's saying a little bit, because we are applying and just got we're applying for a YCC bid, and we're told that we got a provisional bid for our young women's team. But in order to get it, we have to come up with a development plan, and part of that is developing a girls' club league. You know, and we're right now. We're trying to, but we're very new at that level. But for USAU to require us to put together a girls' club league when most of our leagues right now are high school leagues and are mixed is I think is a barrier to entry, which is exactly what we're trying to break down.
I want to pivot to a slightly different thing, and I don't know whether restroom adventure college, or I'm sort of interested in what Hannah was talking about in terms of losing a bunch of people as they head to college, and particularly kids of color, but I think just in general, a lot of kids sort of fall off potentially, and that one of the realities that sort of goes undiscussed, oddly enough, is that people are not choosing their schools because of the university program. For the most part, there are some kids who do, but very few people are really in a position to do that for a variety of reasons. And so you've got a lot of people who go places, and the reality for a lot of kids is that they're going into a player-coached environment. And so the fact that there isn't, there aren't real coaches, there aren't real fields, there aren't real support systems at the college level. Typically, most schools means that you're gonna lose a lot of people because there's really no one who's wearing a hat, sort of an organizational hat, unless you come from Seattle. Everybody who comes from Seattle ends up in the leadership role in their next place because they know what it looks like to have played in an environment that has organized routines. If you don't come from Seattle, you don't really know what to do with all that. So I think some kind of structure that helps support all the schools that aren't competing at a super high level necessarily, but are growing the sport in a really meaningful way. Have a lot of good athletes and good players.
So I'd love to explore more ideas about club-based programs. If our long-term goal is getting kids to stay playing and moving on to the competitive opportunities, I think that encouraging the growth of programs like a Seven Hills, where you have relatively low costs and hopefully high amounts of kids that are impacted and able to play. I think that's kind of that should be our next pathway for getting kids to play more and playing year round. At this point, for our community, it feels like our school-based teams, they exist. They exist almost everywhere, it seems like, and those are great opportunities that most kids already have. But that's an opportunity that only exists for a couple months out of the year, and continuing to get these kids to play, it means getting them out in the summer, in the winter, in the fall or spring, depending on what season they play in normally. And in terms of cost benefit, that seems like a really great opportunity to create those chances for kids to play year round.
As a parent of a 10 to 12-year-old, I don't want my kids playing Ultimate year-round yet. Right? Maybe when you get to high school, maybe you're ready to play year-round Ultimate. But as an elementary and middle school student, I want my kids playing soccer, basketball, and skiing, and Ultimate. Right? Because, well, first of all, we know that you play one sport too much. You get kids that get to college and they're done. They're like, forget it. You pushed me to Ultimate. I played for 12 years. I'm done. Right? My kid's babysitter was a soccer player. It happened to her. She stopped playing in college. She hasn't played since. And we also know it's also physically bad for kids to play the same sport over and over again. You get injuries. So I'd like to see us do what we can to ensure that there are as many opportunities and to build out the base of our Ultimate playing community, and especially in Seattle. Right? There's still a lot of elementary schools that don't have teams. There's still a lot of middle schools that don't have teams. So anything we can do, whether that's USAU helping out with funding, helping out with lobbying so that we get more fields, and support. And I would say that I think there's also a give and take between communities that have good programs and USAU. And so I think if USAU sees a community that's doing something good, they should help support that and not try to push it down. And similarly, they should learn from a community that's doing good so that they can help a community that's a new community to the sport. So, and I just maybe Salt Lake doesn't have a great Ultimate community for youth, and USAU could do a good job of saying, oh, Just Northwest or New England Ultimate are both doing a good job. Here's ways that you can implement a youth program. Here's 2 models. One of these might work well for you. So I think there's a way, a give and take between USAU and the local organizations to help continue to build the base up. Which isn't to take away from your club, maybe by the time you get to high school.
No, I totally agree that kids should be playing multiple sports year round.
To pile on to his point, you could act as a connector between people who are strong in one area and weak in another, and put them in touch with each other. That would be nice. But one of the things that I see from a couple of the comments is that it seems to me that USAU should intentionally work locally. And when I've had conversations or difficulties that I need to work out with USAU, it's been a one-size-fits-all solution. It's very, very frustrating, and it tends to undermine the trust in the program that they're actually paying attention. even prepare to the level that we wish. So the exception, I can't remember what you call it, but when you have a disagreement or you have a student who's not qualified for some reason, what's that program called? An exception. Okay. That needs to be a really robust, intentional, and a program that really cares about getting the kids involved, rather than applying the rules across the board. I'm sure you know. But eligibility, right? But that's a local issue, right? And so what I would like to see USA do is really get into the weeds with their individual programs. And it's messy. It takes a lot of work.
Because we have spent time
right? But ultimately,
now that beginning this discussion, we're talking about how to provide accessibility to Ultimate to kids who haven't played and kids who have, kids from all different backgrounds, and then we have like geared into a space of talking about specific, like small specific things. We haven't really like continued applying the same lens to discussions. So I have nothing to say really, but just want to.
I think that's a great point to build off of that. That we've been focused a lot on what playing opportunities exist, how can we change the existing playing opportunities, but how can we build beyond that? I think there's a good question asked that fits within that lens of equity.
So when I hear these two conversations, it's like two conversations. There's the high level of play and providing those opportunities, but also access to all kids having opportunities. And sometimes they seem parallel, sometimes they seem divergent, right? I mean, if we're trying to get that club level player, like that's one goal, but we're also trying to get all kids to be exposed to Ultimate from every neighborhood. And some of the barriers to that are fields and coaches. Right now in Seattle, we've kind of almost overmaxed our capacity in that regard. And I just want to also say that I think that when Kate was talking in Cossack, that high school-based structure just reminds me of what grew the sport in the first place, which was colleges meeting each other to play tournaments, like regional. And sometimes we'd go to a tournament and we were kind of a lower level team, maybe we'd have 2 teams. There was a place for everyone to come. You could be that really good team that's going to go to the finals, and you could be on that team that's going to be heckling everyone at the finals. And it wasn't just an invite to one special place. So there were a lot of opportunities when I was in college, and that's why there's so much Ultimate. That's where we all got. So if that hook is now a high school thing, it's more access.
So I'm going to put the lens on this. I'm a software engineer and a computer science teacher, and I teach at the high school level. And one of the things is getting girls and people of color into computing. You can't start at high school because they don't know. You can't expect people to go into computer science in college because they've never taken it in high school. You can't expect them to jump into it in high school because they've never done it in middle school. Well, middle schoolers are their own little thing. They need to be on their own island. That's my joke, right? If you haven't gotten to them by middle school, you're too late. You kind of have to start earlier. You have to expose them earlier and give them opportunities, whether it's a club team, like through the schools, a league. My son played in the Motley Community Center League starting in 3rd grade. He's a senior in high school now. He had no idea up until he wouldn't have known had he waited until high school that this was even for him. He comes from a family that has the ability to put him in that position, to take him to the community center. But what about the kids who don't have the parents who speak English or have the money to pay the $40 to play, right? Why can't you give them that opportunity through their elementary school to have local leagues or teams and expose them to the play at a gentle, non-competitive level and teach them the basic skills of the game and of the spirit of the play and of the conflict resolution, which is so core. So that by the time they're in high school, they're an advocate. They can go back and take it to the elementary schools and bring up more kids, right?
I think that if we're honest about what has driven the growth of youth ultimate in Seattle, it's been the public school, middle school, and that has driven the growth of youth ultimate in Seattle for the last almost 20 years, more than any other program that Just Northwest has done or anybody else has done. This one thing. It's created a freeway for kids to be introduced to Ultimate. It's paid the coaches, though not enough. It's provided fields, though not enough. But you know, each fall we have 70 middle school teams of kids playing for free, getting great quality coaching, and growing Ultimate in Seattle. Certainly, there's been great investment from private schools and some other schools, and at the elementary level. And elementary has grown because of it, because kids see their older siblings playing in middle school and they want to play in elementary. But the reality is, the public school program that Just Northwest runs in partnership with SBS has been the basis of our growth and our success. That is what I'm worried about in USAU, is that they're walking away from school-based ultimate. That's such an amazing opportunity to provide the experience of playing ultimate. And what I see is at the USAU level is this increased emphasis on club ultimate for youth players. And to me, that just sounds like youth soccer. And I'm not sure that that's what we want.
I think one thing I'm noticing right now is also that we have a significant amount of youth players here, and I feel like it's just a bunch of adults talking out about what we should do with our kids, and it's them that's affecting, it's not you, So I think we should let youth talk.
Yeah. I think something that USAU could definitely look into is having some sort of leagues for players where they don't need to pay dues to some people in Boulder. Like, as a 5th grader, I would have never thought to pay dues to people in Boulder for USAU. And if we want to really have outreach to these diverse low-income communities, we can't expect them to pay $20, $30 just for USAU. We can expect them to pay for homes, we can expect them to pay for fields, if that. But we need to have more opportunities for kids to play where they're not having to pay these big membership fees, and where we can expand past just people who can afford membership fees into everyone who wants to play Ultimate.
I play Ultimate just in like high school games that I don't do licensee or and on the way over here, I was discussing with Caustic how the fees were like on top of whatever finding fees for sports here at the beginning of the season. Also, you pay another $40. Definitely, it's not really something I find necessary to do, because I'm not doing more than maybe 1 or 2 USA Ultimate tournaments a year, and that. So for youth Ultimate players who are just doing it through public schools, I don't know if it's so necessary for that. It's fine for me just how it is, but I also am not somebody who's playing YCC or any other things. But I know the majority of the girls on my team also play high school. And even though our teams are small, especially for Men's Ultimate, the majority of the girls' teams don't do anything beyond high school. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. Into the experiment. to Seattle. The same amount of
Those comments are why it strikes me as so contrary to what we're trying to do, to have all the high school players from a team have to get USAU memberships in order for one player on that team to try out for YCC. Seems really counterproductive. And also the USAU state championship tournament requires all these kids to get full memberships or some sort of memberships. It's very expensive, and the carrot, or it's been a stick kind of approach to, like, if you want to go to Westerns, you've got to go. You got to send a team, and so teams are sending JV players who are going to one weekend tournament and paying all this money so that then maybe the varsity can go or whatever. So it just seems to create almost a relationship of animosity between USAU and the local level, as opposed to encouraging partnership-based. Really, yeah, that's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, I feel like USAU's first priority should be increasing youth play in all areas, not just the youth that are willing and ready to pay membership, which a lot of time is like wealthy young men who are like so amped to play and just like can. And I think that, like, the world we live in today, there could probably be a lot of opportunities if USAU can get creative to find ways to finance that, like finance ultimate programs in low-income schools, like especially middle school, elementary schools throughout the country. Scholarships, like having a really easy option online to say, like, hey, I can't pay this USAU membership. Like, I shouldn't have to prove this. I just can't pay this. How can I get this covered so that this shouldn't be a barrier to a team or to players who want to compete at a high level? Because saying you want to increase playing and saying you want to promote competitive play while charging all this money to increase playing and competitive play doesn't really make sense.
It seems to me that at the youth level that Seattle, correct me if someone thinks that I'm wrong on this, has more involvement, has more diversity, especially girls relative to boys, but also diversity across income levels and race and other divisions as well. And it seems like there are two major differences. One of them is starting sooner, so starting younger, elementary and middle school, and the other is the emphasis on public schools, especially public schools actually in the city, public schools as opposed to starting in the suburbs. So it seems like maybe that should be, if they want to increase, especially want to increase diversity, but also grow the program, it seems like the emphasis should be on starting sooner and agreeing on making the public schools. We have sort of an example here.
Now, one concrete thing I'd love to see from USAU is a curriculum, like a PE curriculum that is geared at an elementary school or a middle school that they can run for 3 weeks in their PE program in the school. I know when Kyle was with USAU, there was some talk about that. I don't know if anything happened to it. Once the curriculum's established, then getting it out into the school. I mean, that's, like Jude was saying, I mean, the public middle school league is what has built Ultimate in Seattle, is what's turned Seattle into this mecca for youth Ultimate. If we want to expand that and continue it and diversify it, we get it into the schools and we get it across the board.
This isn't going to work. They can watch that.
We've been talking quite a bit about expanding the outreach, doing more outreach, and getting more players playing. And I feel that runs counter to the vision of USAU. And the reason I say that is we look at the breakout groups. The breakout groups we had is Olympics, semi-pro, elite, branding, and youth. So, you know, of all those, you know, only youth is not involved at the highest level. And when we started the conversation, the youth conversation is going to be broken out into two areas: competitive and outreach. So again, you know, half the focus on youth was YCC and competitive. Where, as I look locally in my club, YCCs may affect less than 5% of my youth population. And as far as an organization-wide, it's about the same as far as the elite plays. So we would like USAU to help us with doing outreach to broaden our base of youth players, and at the same time, you know, also, you know, find ways of doing outreach to adults and growing that. You know, and that was one of the things I wanted to talk to, but that doesn't fall under Olympic, semi-pro, or elite, or branding. So that's, you know, one of the reasons that I ended up here. And you know, just to tie this up, we were, as a state, Oregon, we were marked down because last year we held a USAU-sponsored states tournament, and this year the state decided not to. And that ties in directly to what some of the other people here said about the cost of the USAU membership for a single day. And I've heard from a number of people that the reason that didn't happen this year was because USAU did away with the one-day membership. You know, so those are some of the things that USAU could do to broaden the appeal and base to get more players, more youth players participating in the sport.
I wanted to just kind of talk about.
Hey folks, that's 1/2 hour. Now you need to spend 10 minutes wrapping up where you are converging on opinion, where you are agreeing, and areas where there is divergence, where you are not agreeing.
Okay, just really quickly then. I played in Seattle Youth Ultimate from 2000 to 2007, and I think we talk a lot about how the middle school programs developed and had this big outburst of players, but I think we have to remember, though, also the individuals and the coaches and the people who worked incredibly hard to build those programs. You know, to also remember, you know, also like the Hannah Kawhis, the Sam Terrys, the Ben Wiggins, the Mirandas, you know, the Shannon O'Malley's, Alyssas, like they had incredible amount of impact and have an incredible amount of impact on the youth players and where they come from right now. And I think Seattle may have gotten lucky that these coaches, these organizers, you know, had done an incredible amount of work and were willing to do an incredible amount of work on racism, identity, leadership, youth empowerment, and communication, and also juggling, having to organize and having to advocate, having to fundraise, having to do all these things. I think when I think about my experience and how lucky I was to grow up and then to become a coach because I've had that training from those coaches, and then to remember that those, you know, so many of Mercer kids are coming back and becoming coaches. So many of people from the old Moho days are now organizers, and there is a reason, and I think a part of that is the coaching training at the heart of that too. So when we build in middle school structures, I think it is important to remember it's not just having a middle school team, but putting in resource and time into training wonderful coaches. Because I know everyone can think about a coach, a teacher, a mentor that really impacted them in their life. And if that person was in Ultimate, I think no matter what touchstone, whether it's elementary school, middle school, high school, college, club, that's what brings you in. And I think there's structural aspects that we need to make sure that those individuals have the opportunity to emerge and not feel like they have to climb mountains to get there.
I'd like to just recap a few ideas real quick that have been kind of cycle through and then we can see where to add on. I think that one thing I'm hearing a lot of is that there's this divergence between this competition and outreach is really at conflict in a lot of places in the youth community, right? Creating, you know, those competition level play, that's an emphasis where we're talking so much about wanting to be accessible. And so those two don't always match up really well, and that maybe that focus really needs to shift more to outreach. Some of the ideas around that shift to outreach that kind of pull away from that competition and club space are things like the membership barrier, the cost of membership barrier, and membership for a single state championship tournament. It's also the idea of moving towards club, which when we think about club, we think more about youth soccer and how that creates another cost and barrier of access to the sport. I'm also hearing at the same time that, you know, some of the sustainable club play, such as seven is an opportunity to reach more players at a local level. And I think I've heard it a few times throughout that really focusing at the local level and how can you create opportunity at the local level that can bring down those cost barriers and provide better access. In order to do that, I'm also hearing that we need to increase resources. There needs to be opportunities for coaches and leadership development to have the conversations. And I think you brought up a good point. A lot of the leaders that have emerged in Seattle have helped create the culture that we have here in Seattle. And that's also something that is not true everywhere else. You know, a lot of communities, we're having a conversation that's, you know, far more progressed than some of these other communities have engaged in yet, right? So that balance of creating resources that can reach other communities, give them the opportunity to develop those same types of leadership is going to be really critical. As far as getting youth playing, looking younger, elementary school is really where we want to create those opportunities, doing something that links into schools, public schools, in a setting where we can reach and access all different players. I have your point now very clearly that outreach results, that a lot of the conversation is focused on competition, and that in some ways is in direct conflict with conversation on accessibility. Are there other clear topics that didn't quite get on there that are still, you know, I've made notes on a lot of things, but does that recap kind of big picture?
The curriculum comment.
PE curriculum.
I'd also like to not argue, but emphasize the fact that I know we're talking about growth, we want a lot of growth, but I think it's important to keep in mind like quality and what we see in Ultimate and what that we feel like they can bring to you, instead of just looking at like growing the sport massively. I think it's important to hold on to those values that we like to
Yeah, I wanted to say that I was going to comment before that, like, it's the materials that we give to new coaches or new programs, and should always go around
I don't know how kind of survey you can do, but there's no question in my mind that the reason Seattle youth frisbee is where it is because of the coaches. Because of the excellence of the coaches who have given their time. In a lot of cases, it's, you know, very few resources are being, not much remuneration involved, and the fact that if there's some way to do a sort of brain picking of like how could we, you know, put to Salt Lake City or wherever, how could you kind of map that or figure out how to kind of best practices kind of thing to kind of get the results, the kind of leadership to generate the kind of leadership out of the youth communities from those coaches would be great to figure out how to look at it carefully what's happened during the program.
I'm going to grab the midpoint newspaper, which was writing things on that. I don't want to get killed for not doing that, so I'm going to let you all continue chatting for a second while I grab that. Sure, thanks. There should be one up front and a pen with it.
I would just like to add that make sure that your eligibility isn't actually working.
I know we have a few other
Has USC ever thought about having like ambassadors? Because I feel like it's just a bunch of old white men picking and choosing what they should do with children. I mean, the best way to figure it out is ask them, right?
Well, you did that back in the day, right? There was a college rep on the UPA board.
If you're trying to grow,
And I would think that it would make, that's a great point. I would think it makes sense that there's a high school rep on the USAU board. Like middle school might be too soon, but you know, certainly a college rep and high school rep makes sense.
There are club representatives, and there are, I don't think, college player reps, just club player reps. So that's a good point.
When there are events that hosted that meet our values and we want to collaborate and assist.
We're going to try to capture as much as we can over here. We'll see if we have to add anything. Other ideas, we keep going.
What Emily said, like, quality is really important, and also Casey, like, bringing it to talk about the coaches. My personal struggle has mostly been finding coaches from all the kids that I already have interested at the middle school I coach at. For example, in the fall, I had 2 coaches in just 1 grade. Like, I don't know, it felt unmanageable, and then we're sharing field space ridiculously. So it would be wonderful to see USAU. They talk about having some money they want to funnel into things, funnel it towards the public school program so that a school doesn't say, well, our budget is to pay 1 coach. We're sorry that you have 6 teams. We are also offering PE waivers for all kids that want to participate. So it's on you to run this program where we're going to tell all the kids to go do it, but we're not going to fund it. Like it's madness, basically. So it'd be wonderful to see the national body try to help programs that are already booming in terms of enrollment or desired enrollment to make it actually possible.
The more stuff that USAU can offer for free instead of coaching training should be free. If you want more good coaches, make it free to get access to the school-based
I think Mira wanted to just expand a little bit on what Linda was saying about ambassadors.
Girls in high school or something like that, going on tour to elementary schools to talk about but also getting them to play on
Can you repeat what Mira said? I caught a little bit of it, but I couldn't catch all of it.
Having girls in high school, after the ambassador program, going into elementary schools and talking about why they play ultimate frisbee and talking about equity and getting them involved.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Also, it's coaching. It's coaching opportunities, community service, coaching opportunities, potentially for high school kids and elementary.
I don't know, actually, this is all the things about the success of the ultimate to note and take from this is that even though there are a lot of adjustments that need to be made in terms of funding and the structure of things, a lot of the solutions that people are coming up with that sound like really strong solutions or case of reference, like the reason Seattle scene has been so big and strong is it will take a lot of effort and time in addition
to funding and redirecting that process. And whether that emphasis is from funding people who will put in the effort or like putting in the effort at a higher level, it seems like you don't have to, like, it's not, there won't be a quick fix or like an appointing of a representative or something like that. I think locally based is really aligned with that. Make sure you capture that because, like you're saying, right? USAU is an organization in Boulder. How that has influence at the local level, right? Funding can be part of that, but bringing that, finding that funding is step one. Funding can be part of that, but then what's really happening to facilitate that becomes sustainable at the end, right? How do you have anything about that? And I think a lot of that's what you're saying about developing those leaders who are going to help in that community. We're going to really build that, and that goes into funding and maybe even making it. It's not just about being a coach, there's a lot more to that conversation.
So it's support. It's a support model. If you're trying to grow the sport, maybe, I mean, it's not a bottomless pit of money that you can just throw around, but like if the vision is that you want to support the growth of the sport, it seems like the elite level will happen. If you have more seeds, right, there's going to be more kids that want to go to that next level. But if you just have more grass, more kids playing everywhere, it seems like the elite level kind of would take care of itself a little bit.
Totally agree with that. Totally agree with that.
Is there like for when people pay their player dues, do they have like a option of where does that money get allocated to? Just because like, it's like a transparency issue, because like do they know if they're like that money is going to like Triple Crown Tour, to like the Olympic funding, to like if you had like you choose where does their money want to go to, if you have like coaching and like the opportunity to be those main focuses, I'm pretty sure we get some dough for that. I'm pretty sure money is a big Is the plan to hear what all the other...
Yeah, so the plan after this is we're going to go back together, we're going to see actual write-ups up on the wall, kind of hear feedback from different groups we have, and then kind of highlight, there's a lot of priority learning. Our group came up with how many different ideas, their group came up with how many different ideas, and I think that's the big challenge. There's a lot of different ways to approach this, and each group is focused on a different area, like you pointed out, right? There's areas that aren't even represented in the conversations that will be part of the strategic plan, and so how do we take this and figure out where those focus points are to include in the strategic plan? And I think that's really the question.
To follow take care of the base and the elites role. I think also if you take care of the girls, sometimes and focus a little extra on the girls, so the boys follow to some extent. And I think also if you look and take care of the financial equity, if you look to bring up the base of underprivileged communities, sometimes the overprivileged communities are going to be lifted up in the process too. So I think if we're looking to grow the base, focusing on girls playing and underprivileged communities is a big help.
Check in with Henry at the
Okay, so
I'm gonna be here. Oh, my bad.
Okay, so the way this is going to go, I'm going to read the guts of the current policy that USAU has towards the semi-pro leagues. And the question is going to be, how's that working out? Should we change it? What do you think of it? But to open, I'm going to say one of the largest impacts in the history of the sport has been these semi-pro leagues over just the last 5 years. At first, we thought it was improbable that they could ever be successful, so we kind of ignored them, we being USAU. Then after some success, we felt we had to make a statement. And we made a statement, and I'm going to read it to you. It's actually like 3 pages long. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but the guts of it are this. For the many reasons outlined below, USA Ultimate will not promote, partner with, or otherwise formally recognize or endorse the AUDL or MLU. This decision is based on several fundamental and philosophical differences and operational conflicts between USA Ultimate and these leagues. One such determining factor is USA Ultimate's position. In USA Ultimate's position is the significant variation in officiating systems. USA Ultimate does not believe in nor support the fundamental changes that are being made to the sport by these leagues as outlined in long-standing policy. Along with WIFDIF, USA Ultimate remains committed to the self-officiated nature of the sport and the principles of spirit of the game. The use of referees and a different set of rules by these leagues represents a significant contradiction to the values and mission of USA Ultimate, and it is our belief that much of what makes Ultimate unique in a very positive way is lost in and devalued by the models of both the AUDL and the MLU. We work tirelessly to expose the sport to youth and are not comfortable confusing them and their families with significantly different versions of the sport. As both long-standing value and an organizational policy, gender equity continues to be important to USA Ultimate. Neither semi-pro league provides any significant playing opportunities for women, and we believe providing equal playing opportunities for both men and women is the best way to both grow and show off the sport. So that's the sort of core of it that is harsh and makes everybody uncomfortable. As we say, we won't formally recognize, partner with, promote. We are going to ignore you. And that's uncomfortable position to be in. But we are in that position because we believe these values actually matter. And we get that belief from endless surveying. And thank you for those of you who actually fill out the surveys and meetings like this. So we believe their values are completely legit and for real in this whole thing, and we're not wanting to back off one little bit on the back. But does that mean the right way to do it is to say, you know, they don't exist? And I want to take you through what's happened on the tour so far, the reactions in the communities, and how the thought has evolved, so that you don't have to recreate all that in the next 20 minutes. Maybe we can move the ball even further. In DC, the idea came about that fundamentally ignoring the pro leagues, which is what this does, isn't actually influencing the pro leagues. And if we have values and we think these matter, we should be trying to influence the pro leagues, not just ignore it. And so therefore we want to have some level of engagement, some interaction. The problem is we feel like we are leaving behind these things that we aren't willing to leave behind. And that could probably be said better, but fundamentally we'd be violating the values we believe in if we even work with, and in that way help in some way these organizations. So the solution that was come up with to that is if the semi-pro leagues could agree that they support these values, the spirit of the game and gender equity, and that they think they could get to a place that actually provides gender equity in their play, which means on the field, can't see it, can't be it, and spirit of the game, if they believe they can get there someday, and that there would be steps along the way to getting there, then it would be fine to work with them, because we would be agreeing on the values, and it's only a question of how you can get there. And the idea of a policy that would say, instead of ignoring them, we would say, if we can agree on the values, gender equity and spirit of the game being central to how we play, we will be willing to work with you and help you put fans in the seats, help coach train refs. I mean, we do have unbelievable training programs. We would be willing to help in steps if we see you're actually doing it and actually getting there, and because we believe, if we believe you actually want to get there, where these values are part of how you play. Then in Chicago, they pointed out that
if we say any specific steps, then we're telling them how to run their business, and there'd be no way they could accept it. So we would only state it as a high-level policy. And then in Minneapolis, what was added was that what happens then is a negotiation of sorts, where there's this high-level policy that says, hey, we're just saying, if you agree on our values, we want to work with you. And by the way, it could say, you're doing a lot of great things too. And we have, our missions are actually somewhat aligned. Our values are different, but our missions are somewhat aligned. It'd be better if we could work together. We'd like to work together. It's just the values thing is completely in the way. But if you can agree on the values thing, we will. Then a negotiation takes place of what does that actually mean? What would they actually do in what year? And how would they prove that they really mean it? And that would be, and when I say they, I realize I'm talking to you, but so I should be saying they, you, whatever. If that was true, what would we want at the table when we're talking to the pro leagues and working on what that plan could be to get to a place where there is gender equity? Is it, 4-4, or is it a women's league and a men's league? I don't know, but we will. That would have to be worked out, and we would want to have women at the table when we're having that discussion. And that is obvious in retrospect, but when it was said in Minneapolis, it was like, yeah. So that's where we got to. That was the last stop. And with that, I'll shut up and see what people think.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Is there potential through this process that USAU's values and mission change, or are those things set in stone? I mean, because it seems like there's a lot of movement towards a certain area. I'm wondering if there's any potential change in those things.
If we do this 11-city tour and what we hear is that we are off base on the values, then we will need to change that. I mean, the values aren't part of written in some tablet at USAU headquarters and we all go in and bow to the shrine. The organization is made up of people like me and you that are players who are willing to be board members, and we are there to represent the players. The players own the sport. The people that are in there don't actually own it. It is the players that own it. So if the players tell us that they value something different than what we think the players value, then we will have to honor it. And if it means, in fact, what it could be,
is the mission set in stone?
We are not planning on changing the mission on this issue. If that were to happen, if the values thing were to be, literally if we were to come out of this tour with, you know what, the spirit of the game was great, but that's kind of a thing in the past. Turns out refs work great. What you would actually need to do is elect different board members, because the people you've been electing all hold those values, and it's who they are. And so they're not going to be able to just change their point of view on those things. So if the players really want that to be different, they need to elect new board members probably, and then those new board members put new people in office, and you could really make change happen that way.
Can you spell out for me, as someone who's often kind of thinking about this, what the incentive is for a pro league to want to work with USAU?
Very good question. So fundamentally, they need fans, they need players, and they need refs. And they're very short on refs. We could definitely help with that. We have a observer training program. We could make a part of it for refs if there was a plan to get to these really observers someday. Fans in the seats. I mean, I think the most obvious thing is if there are women playing in the game, there'd be more women fans. But there's lots of things we can do to help with getting fans in the seat. If we promote actively, if we endorse the pro league, I've got to believe that would help bring players from the leagues out to watch. And the more primary members they get, the more people they bring along, their friends and buddies. And I mean, I think we could do a lot for fans, to bring fans, which is revenue. So I think there's plenty we could do. We could go so far as they're part of our playoff system. Their teams are in our system. I mean, we could. So there's a lot that could be done if we did talk. It's just now we don't.
I guess I have a question for all of you guys. Do anybody here have a very different idea for what USAU's vision should be or statement should be towards the pro leagues? I was pretty surprisingly happy with it all across the board. But I was wondering if coming out to you guys, if there's something that I wasn't seeing or some voice that I was blind to.
And there are a number of I feel like what a lot of Ultimate players in general are just blind to is that Pro Leagues gives an opportunity to like economically disadvantaged people to play for free. It's a subgroup, right? It's males usually. But nevertheless, that is a group that wasn't playing for free before, or have access to play post high school or whatever before, is now currently able to play. That's one of the reasons why I currently play, because I'm not really willing to give up that portion of support for that subgroup yet, which is why I'm really sad that USAU and the pro leagues aren't talking, because they support economic disadvantage, not intentionally, they're trying to make money off it, but for whatever reason, but you know, they still do it accidentally. And then USAU is trying to promote gender equity. So being part of the Olympics, the fact that those two things aren't able to come together is really hard for me as a male player playing in both USAU and pro leagues.
I mean, at least to me it seems like the whole idea of the spirit of the game, which kind of brought me at least into the sport, and I think it's such a huge part of bringing in youth into the sport. The very small subset of players who might benefit from getting play paid for by a pro team is not compared to the vast majority of players who are kind of brought in by the spirit of the game, I guess.
What do you mean by the very small stuff? Like,
So
what I'm thinking is like,
what are you thinking of how disadvantaged players are brought into the sport via pro? How do you think that happens? 'Cause I don't know.
I think it just gives them access to play post high school, right? So like, hard to give an example, I'd say like Franklin players, Franklin boys players. I only know like 2 that played in college.
So I guess
4 years.
what I would say is how many people for them? There might be 2 of them, 3 of them there, in all Cascades. Sure. And that those 3 players don't unfortunately make a really big difference in the whole scheme of things for where USAU's attention and funding should go to. And putting that same sort of attention into other aspects would be a much better use of money and time.
I think if USAU did that, yes, they don't. USAU is not super accessible in the pro scene. Very, very expensive. And whether or not, people are taking advantage of like playing, it's their choice, but having the access point is important.
I understand that. I don't know. I feel like it's a big price to pay to just get a little bit of financial kickback for people who are like maybe economically disadvantaged, but probably not that economically disadvantaged. Like if you have the time to commit to doing something like this, and I don't know. You to be able to make a pro team, you have to have been putting money in over the years. So like it's not like. I don't know, it's not like some brand new kid to the sport is playing on these pro teams, and it's like giving them access. Instead, it's cutting off, like, I don't know, a huge percentage of the population, so some people have small so I know what you're saying, but like I feel like it's not comparable. Like
the Olympics. To me, it's like just like. But yeah, it's hard. It's very difficult. And I don't think we're doing a good job accessing those like youth to like get them involved in the sport in the first place. But yeah. I mean, I totally, I feel it for sure.
Yeah, and I think part of Sam's point is that right now it's like a very small league in terms of pro leagues. If you look at larger leagues like the NBA or the NFL, they not only have people in the league who are getting to play like for free and obviously getting paid lots of money, but there's like a trickle down effect. A lot of people are like able to go to college on scholarships and stuff like that when they would not normally be able to, and like a lot of their players are coming from lower income places, and so I think it would have a much bigger effect like in pretty far in the future as opposed to how it is now as a small.
I don't usually talk a lot, so I'm not trying to talk a lot, but I totally like respect that point that like the NBA and some of these other like national organizations provide access, but like look at the money that's like and the marketing that goes towards the NBA versus the WNBA. Like it's not even really that people don't care, it's just that like people don't know where to go see women's games because they're not marketed. Like nobody puts money into it. So like yes, it's accessing some people, but it's still not accessing like the whole population.
I agree. I think before USAU should join and help or support or do anything to help pro leagues need to be in the right place. They need to do the right things and be ethical, right? Or we're just building a structure that's going to have the same inherent biases for years and years and years, and we won't be able to take it down. Right? We should do it right from the beginning.
So would you take the notion of a policy that says if we agree on our values and that there's a long-term plan where you're going to play with gender equity and by the way, maybe diversity is in that, but and the spirit of the game, you're thinking that has to be now, not a plan to get there 10 years from now, because you kind of wouldn't trust it, or because I think it's much more plausible to think that they could get there over an 8 to 10 year time horizon than to tell them you need to change your whole business model tomorrow. I think that's more likely to meet with just rejection. And maybe it should be rejection. Maybe we should stick with this.
I don't really want to talk about because I'm a white male who benefited from the pro leagues a lot. But I do think that the main issue that I have with the policy is that you're not talking at all. And I think right now we're making a lot of assumptions about what people think without having the conversation first. And the other thing is, I think you said this, or someone said the point of at what cost are we going to make advancement in whatever way. There are people moving to the United States to play for these pro leagues. This has happened in Seattle. This league has a huge international presence based on their marketing abilities. So people are flocking to this idea, and I think the conversation needs to happen because the sport is going to start transforming in ways that maybe we don't know right now. So without having the conversation first, we don't have a chance to influence it. So I guess what I would be saying, Henry, is that right now, if you're at one side of the spectrum, I feel like the situation that may have been proposed through the other cities sounds like the complete opposite side of the spectrum. And maybe we just need to start by just having the conversation and seeing where the owners are at in general. And I don't want to speak for you, but the owners are in general, and just see what the pulse is and see if there is any middle ground. Because if there isn't, then I would probably side with you anyway.
So your twist on it would be, instead of saying here's a plan where we're saying we want you to get to here, do we agree on these values? Just start with having a conversation.
Yeah.
So to answer your question about like what Kyle was talking about, sort of like making a change now, and then like making that partnership, I think that is like the most important thing, that the change happens before the partnership is created, because like as a program develops, like the history matters, and it matters like who's involved in the creation of the pro leagues and like what voices are there for all of that.
So to help put the words into your mouth, they have been started by a group of people that you're, because of who they are, probably mainly white males, no exceptions. It would be hard to believe that they would come out to the same place as the world of Ultimate players, which is what is in this filling this room right now. And so the notion that we would expect they would say that they would be able to get to that same place of gender equity and spirit of the game being built into the way we play seems unlikely. You're worried because it's being built by people. And I'm referring to people before you, the people that started the thing, as these are folks that built the thing with obviously trying to make a successful pro league profitable and have owners be happy someday was their goal, I imagine. And that is such a different group of people. You're thinking, because we haven't been in there all along, your trust isn't there.
Yeah, I think like the structure of it, and like all develops in those like creation years, and I think that like women need to be on the field for like to be in those conversations and to have those connections, like, to create the system so that it is inclusive.
So this right now says we don't formally recognize or work with the pro leagues in any way. And what's good about that is that the pro leagues were not formed with the players in mind. It was originally formed by people trying to sell ownership, and I think that there's a lot of work being done by players now because most of the people in it are players. But still, because of that original formation, it is set in a certain direction. Gotcha. Gina.
I want to go back actually to your question before, which is whether or not we think this is a good policy. And I think what's hard for me to hear from this policy is, first of all, and I don't know if this is just the way you edit it, Henry, but like most of it is actually about officiation, and there's 3 or 4 sentences about gender equity. So to me, and the officiation is higher. So that's like my first thought. Right now I'm a women's player here in Seattle. I've played women's for the last 2 years in Seattle, 1 year in Boston. And as I look towards the future and think about what opportunities there are to play, I have all of my eggs in the USAU basket, and that's a little frightening for me right now, considering there are a lot of things that USAU is doing regarding gender equity and inclusion and diversity that is not doing it for me, but I have no other choice. Like, that's my only option right now. The men in our sport have the opportunity to sort of choose between USAU and semi-pro leagues, and I think that right now that decision is mostly USAU and some semi-pro. I think that further down the line, I think that there will be more and more men playing in the semi-pro leagues for a variety of reasons. Economic is probably the biggest one. And what Zach said that rings really true to me right now is that if my governing body that represents me and is in charge of my playing opportunities isn't in discussion, not necessarily collaboration, but if there's literally no conversation there, that's really hard for me as a player to think about that.
So I hate to get a little too ahead of myself here, but I mean, coming as like owners, do you think, just as a possibility at all, do you think it would ever be possible for the AUDL to play mixed or to play without officiating?
Yes. I'm trying to make that happen.
I would add that I think it's awesome how strong this policy is, and as an owner of the Cascades, I loved having this in place to be able to have a bedrock, because the only reason we're in the AUDL is so that we can try and change it from within, because our values, I'll say my values as an owner, words in my siblings' mouth, are totally in line with self-officiation, gender equity, but there are a lot of other owners within the AUDL are on the other end of the spectrum, and it's a federation. They're not, AUDL is not one group of people, it's a bunch of individual businesses that are all combined more or less in the same business, but really what Jacksonville thinks and acts and does is entirely focused on getting butts into seats in Jacksonville. So when I in Seattle sort of knock on their door and say, hey, let's think about this thing, they're just going to turn around and say, well, is it going to get more people in my seats? Yes, no, no? Okay, sorry, I don't have to listen to you. And I don't believe in a lot of the owners to come to the table. Yeah.
If there was a policy change that would say, we will work with you if you agree these values are central to the sport. Totally. And then if that's what the players were saying, and so far the 4 cities have agreed to that for the most part. But the gender equity thing was a separate breakout, and so we only had one woman in the Minneapolis semi-pro thing. So there's going to be a little asterisk on the input from those cities, but we've got 6, 7 more cities to go, and so if the input is generally that yes, we want you to talk if the values are aligned and they can get there, then we the players would like to put pressure on them to get there by actually offering that we would help if you agree on those values, and that there is a date certain when you will have mixed and be playing the spirit of the game. Would that help you change?
I think it would, but I don't think you're ever going to get some of the owners to agree. Exton knows a hell of a lot more than I do.
That's what Nora is afraid of.
Yes.
I think that's what you're afraid of.
That's what I'm afraid of too.
Yeah.
Keeps me up at night.
By all means, talk.
Dan.
Sorry, man, yeah. Sorry. No one knows me. I was one of the owners of the MLU. And I mean, having seen it from that side. I mean, when the schedule came out, it seemed, I think, a lot more fun about it. And ultimately, it didn't really matter. Sadly. For at least the MLU structure, it was not even people in the seats, it was sponsors and having those conversations. And I think it would have been helpful to have the USA voice. A lot of us were in that. The problem is there was a lot of just straight business. And not in a negative way, but just in a, we felt like the visibility of the sport was important. That involves money. Money comes from sponsorship and that sort of thing. And so before we went too weird with the product, it was weird enough to convince a lot of the big companies we were talking with that there was even, that this was not a game.
That's measuring and actually curling in most curling players.
Convince them it was a legitimate sport at all.
That's going away, and that went away.
And again, there was definitely intent the whole time. A lot of the ownership was seen it,
who said,
and
this isn't going to work.
Ex-players, people who want
and they came watch.
Shocked, but it was what?
That's it. And then,
yeah. I mean, it was
now all these other sports are
on the board and everything else. Like, the leadership structure was also. It would have been nice to challenge the USAU. I think the greater challenge was not the statement. The statement didn't matter. You and I were engaging anyway, on occasion. I think some of the actions of the USAU seemed actually directly antagonistic early on. That was a little bit more concerning, but not really. Ultimately, I don't think there was a lot of value that was going to be. It wouldn't have changed the outcome for the MLU. Certainly, even if USAU had gone all in and done a full marketing push, I don't think that would have changed our outcome. And the ABL structure is different, but I just want to throw out that sort of different voice, which is it's nice to think it matters, but sadly, really, that was not the. It wouldn't have worked any other way. It didn't work anyway, but I don't know that any of the outcomes that USAU could have contributed.
So you're saying basically USAU doesn't have any influence anyway because they're going to go bankrupt no matter what.
Right. Well, I think it's just what we found was it was too early. I mean, there were mistakes were made also. Lots of mistakes were made. But outside of that, I mean, I think the money that USAU can contribute relative to what the business is, at least in the model that we were aiming for, totally disconnected.
To me, it's not about money that USAU can contribute. I think what USAU needs to do is reestablish kind of a moral leadership in the sport, which I think they've lost over the years. And I think this, she has said, like, as a female player, I don't feel like USAU lives up to their equity standards, right? Like, it's hard to stand on this value of equity and influence the leagues when your members don't buy into that. And so I think that the USAU, through this process and through more of this type of stuff and restructuring and really listening, and hearing the players and building an organization that like players buy into, I think then you can have more influence over whether those players support the leagues, right? Like I think that more people say, oh, USAU really stands for what I believe in, they'll listen to USAU a little bit, right? And they'll listen as fans of the AUDL. Well, maybe I won't step in there.
I've got to make an obnoxious announcement, sorry. Hey folks, that's 1/2 hour. Now you need to spend 10 minutes wrapping up where you are converging on opinion, where you are agreeing, and areas where there is divergence, where you are not agreeing. And in 10 minutes, we're going to come back together as a whole group.
Can I make my statement in the wrap-up? As part of the wrap-up?
That'd be great.
Great, because I think it's going to evolve off of a couple.
What I need.
Okay, cool. What I've heard from Nora and I've heard from China and other people is that I think and Zach, I think there's a sense of urgency in this matter. You named 3 things: players, fans, and refs. 5 years ago they didn't have any of those, and now they have players, and they have growing fans. I mean, of the 5 on average of 5 times that I get bugged by someone who said, I heard something about you or something like that. It used to be 0 that were pro, and now it's 3 out of 5. So it's a shifting landscape, and I think USAU loses if they wait longer. And I think all of us here, at minimum, whether or not we are pro involved or not, want USA to succeed by virtue of they can do the most for gender equity, they can do the most for self-officiation and skating game. So I think it's an urgency thing. I will echo what Zach said, and I think that this is a big challenge that USA Ultimate, especially with a statement like this that is so black and white, has done poorly, in my opinion, in the last at least 3 to 5 years, is you're not coming for collaboration. You feel like we, players and people that I talk to more often, feel like USA Ultimate is coming to the table with their preconditions for conversation. I think it's pretty obvious that when you do collaborative conversation and you want to get somewhere, A to B, where the path might be a little bit different, starting with roadblocks is the quickest way to not get to B. So being able to come and have a conversation without saying, here are the things that we absolutely are not going to move until the very end is a great way to figure out how far you're willing to collaborate to actually get what you need out of it. So I would highly suggest that it happens urgently and quickly so that voices that need to be involved can have it before it gets away from yourself.
Bummer. I wish it wasn't so urgent.
Wish we'd had this meeting 4 years ago.
Any other thoughts on where we are agreeing or disagreeing, or just saying?
Okay, great. This kind of goes off what was just said and what Gina said earlier. Is like there definitely is a sense of urgency, and I think that this complete lack of communication between USAU and AUDL now is hurting USAU. Like if USAU came out in support of the Cascades event that was happening, if they took highlights from that and were able to spread it past their reach, and were able to, like, that many more girls and women are seeing highlights of women playing in the professional game, like that reaches so many more people, and that has such a wider spread impact, I personally believe, than no communication between USAU and AUDL whatsoever. Or whether it's an officiating thing, whatever the spirit rule is in the AUDL, like if you highlights are shared from that by USAU, like that's where your morals and your values can be.
I guess I would argue that by highlighting the times when people like have the spirit rule in the AUL and like the player decides no, that wasn't a foul, like turn the disc back over. That is almost highlighting in a bad way, I think, by saying this is the exception and not the norm. And that risks to compromise the whole value system. It's a much broader discussion.
I think that's getting like a little micro. Like I feel like the concept of like find the places where you can agree, and if there are those places, is a good talking point in terms of what Danny's saying. Like maybe there are places in small ways where like the conversation could start.
So gun clinics at halftime would be in or out. Right now, this says we don't do it. We won't do it. We will not work with it. And you know, if we do something like what you're saying, which would be perhaps a gum clinic at halftime.
Gum clinics before the Cascades Cup, right? Like where they're actually seeing female role models on the field. That seems like a different thing than the gun clinic before men's game.
Yeah, or at halftime of a men's game.
Yeah. Feels different.
So it does.
It feels different to me just to have women athletes on the field showcase for girls who attend the gun clinic.
But that happened once. You made that happen, right? And so we're not talking about. So there's like very few things we could do. I mean, gun clinics at halftimes of games all across the country all the time is something we could promote. We could go make that happen.
Are you asking?
I'm asking you. Was that a good idea?
Oh, okay. You're not asking for other things.
It violates this policy. If we have this policy, we cannot do that. And is it a good idea to do that, or is it not? Because it's on this fringe of like, we're not showing women on the actual stage, but we're teaching girls how to play.
I don't necessarily agree with the policy as it stands. I would echo what others have said in that I think that collaboration but without sacrificing your values. Because I think the values are good.
Is it a sacrifice of our values to do gun clinic at halftime of an all-male game?
I think that example specifically sounds patronizing and hypocritical, and I would not be in support of that. But I think that the larger policy could be changed for collaboration in different ways.
And we just have to figure out where the line is, that it's not helping an organization with values that we don't agree with. Okay, another triad. If there was if we could come to an agreement that they actually do value those things, I guess what we're learning from Vero is you got 26 owners, and so there's going to be a group of owners that are going to say yes, we value gender equity and spirit of the game. I know Steve Gordon. I had lunch with him, and he told me he had a great spirit of the game last for about an hour. So I'm sure he will say that. And then you have owners that don't want that. There's a wide spectrum, is what you said. So is there any hope that we could say, as a league, will you make the statement that you agree with those things and will achieve gender equity and spirit of the game in a 10-year time frame? And if you could agree to that, we would start to collaborate. We would start to do some things. Not gun clinics at halftimes. I'm not sure what it is, but we could have, for example, the Gender Equity Action Group there at the negotiating table helping figure out what would work, what would be, where the line is. But we can make the policy, hey, we want you to agree with these values. And if you do, we'll start to collaborate. Zach.
I think that's why this discussion piece is super important, and this might just be like my combative personality. You can laugh at that if you want, but you're mostly dealing with people who, outside of, I would say, 5, you're mostly dealing with people who have a completely different motivation than what you guys have. So I think a broad spectrum saying, we're gonna find some middle ground where we're both able to find this sort of thing. It probably won't happen. I'm gonna say, it probably won't happen on the league-wide level, just because you're not really translating this information into something that they're really motivated by, which is probably money and fans and seats. So I think, I don't know exactly how this looks like, but I think it makes a statement when you're willing to partner with, let's say the Seattle Cascades on the Cascades Cup, by saying like, this is an example of something that we're down with, this is an example of something that really works with our values, and Jacksonville players bidding into each other and breaking people's noses every game, we're not going to deal with that. We're not going to address you, and that's the burn that they get. The Cascades get the plus from doing, quote unquote, the right thing, and then the other organizations that don't feel that way, you don't have to align with them.
So instead of trying to move the whole AUDL onto a path of agreeing on values, it would be we would be willing to collaborate with AUDL teams when there are events that are hosted that meet our values, and we do want to collaborate and assist or something like that.
And I'm sure that's a political nightmare to navigate, but it's just my thoughts on the matter is that you probably aren't going to get anywhere by trying to collaborate with a collective. They're not really a collective in my opinion, but like trying to really hit home the parts that matter, and just maybe ignoring or maybe just trying to have conversations and then letting it go when it doesn't work out.
You got any great ideas?
Can I ask a random question to the women? in this group. This is something that's been really intriguing to me, and I don't mean to take this, but I think it might actually help me at least speak to you later. If you guys could have a, let's just say, I'm totally throwing out terrible numbers, let's say a 4-game season, pro labeled, it's an AUDL women's league for 4 games. I'm going to say start small. Would that be really cool? Would that be like a good step 2 years from now, a year from now, next season? Or would that be not the vision that you'd want to see when it comes to equity? Like, hopefully we get 12 games in, we have 12 teams and 24 teams 5 years from now. Curious. Just a general vibe. Pro? Not what you're looking for?
Are these like 4 like sort of like regional teams or how it is?
Yeah.
Like I would rather.
It can be a West Coast thing. It doesn't have to be super specific.
I'm not a
But if you had an opportunity next season to have 4 teams, would that be an awesome step? Or would that be like not until a team start that kind of
So you would be compensated for the difference in
Yeah, let's say equally. Oh, the difference in like paid 4 times more.
equitably?
Paid 4 times more.
I'm kind of
yeah. I would say everything else same. Thumbs up. Yeah. It's okay. I'm just heat check. Heat check.
I mean, I don't think it would, like, that's kind of how the AUDL started with, like, however many teams, like, 6, 8? Yeah, and it was kind of, like, all spread out, and everyone thought it was going to fail. The, like, only hesitation that I have is just the model in sports and where the money has been in sports, like, overall, you know, and, like, money doesn't go to women's sports. And so if you have 2 separate leagues, I don't know that, like, I know that the women's product is good, but if the money's not going to be the same, because you're not, if it's sponsorships that rules, and then the sponsors aren't going to give women the same amount of money, like, you know, are we going to have an equitable situation again?
So let me rephrase that. What if hypothetically it was the exact same marketing budget, equivalent, right? You can't have like the marketing budget of 24 teams, but the same marketing budget of 4, and then 10. I'm asking this because I'm curious if there's an alignment on here, because maybe the other part that's really difficult for USAU is that they don't know what a group of women would want to look like when they're like, yeah, well, let's make it happen like this.
I mean, yeah, we're going to get the same money and the same benefits and the same number of games. In the long run, then yeah, of course.
And if it's based on that idea of like...
That in the long run, it's actually equal. Yeah. Could you stand having it not equal in the short run? I mean, now it's totally unequal, but if you had a mini season for 2 years and then now we're to grow until it finally, with the goal of being equitable.
I don't know if that's just like a pipe dream that speaks to larger societal inequities. Yeah, you know. Yeah.
But so can I get a heat check from all of you? Is that a good step? Like if USA Ultimate was like, we're going to do some tangible things with AUDL, and we could get a mini season to start, just like AUDL started. Would that be a good step? I'm not like holding any of you, by the way, so like.
That was very helpful.
I mean, if AUDL started over, like if it hadn't existed yet, right? I feel like there's a taint of like, not like general, like, you know, across the country in terms of like equity, right? So it's like, are we gonna like? I feel like my anything this below comes up is like. Is my participation an endorsement of what they've already done, right? Then no, like that would work to people who keeps me back. Pro league for women, where I could play for free and I could like be a role model, you know, on a larger stage. Like, yeah, great.
So if there was like a 5-year timeline where they said in 5 years you're gonna have exactly what everyone else has by virtue of size.
Yeah, whatever.
You'd be cool. Would you be cool with that? Would that turn it to this?
Yes, I'm saying the scale back from thumbs up has to do with like what's our like things that can't be changed at this point, right? Like,
yeah.
fact that it makes me uncomfortable in general. Yeah, like we can't take back what's already happened in terms of like the model, the perpetuated model for sports that Cassie's talking about, that like the damage is done in terms of that time. So if I can take that back, if that could go away, yes. I don't know if I'm. What's the 8 of us in the circle? Like, let's speak for all women.
Yeah.
I think there's also hesitation with me as like what fans show up at. I don't know. There seems more risk behind a women's league than like if the women's league doesn't work out and fans don't show up. It seems like you fall back to one more peg. So you're like, oh yep. We confirmed people don't want to watch women's league, and I feel like that risk is just there. So that's just one thing I'm considering. One of the issues that I have with nationals a couple years back for the AUDL women's league starting.
Yes. I wanted to like keep it on low down, but yeah.
So what about the mixed route to all that?
Oh, well.
I mean, you do the same whole scenario, but it's 6-1 with the notion that in year 8 it's 4-4.
I mean, almost have to make the jump immediately and then market yourself as that. It's doing mixed, same thing as refs or no refs. It's not like you can phase out refs. You either have to go one way or the other, like right now. And that's what makes it hard.
The ref line has to do with what calls they're making, and you can't actually move that line around. And,
I think that there's a lot of truth to that, though. Like, if you asked me if I wanted to go play 6-1, I would tell you, hell no. That's not fun. If you asked me if I wanted to watch an AUDL game where it's 4-4, yeah, that would be cool. But I think that any woman who's shown up to pickup and played 6-1 will tell you that that's not a lot of fun.
I think the AUDL top brass made a pretty clear statement to the Cascades when they gave us a big fat thumbs down on trying to play some mixed games in our regular season. Exton worked, I don't know, 80, 100 hours making phone calls. Yeah, we were just a question of doing it. Yeah, and I think the statement that came from top brass, again, it's a federation of sorts, but the top brass said we're a male pro sport. We're trying to market the league as that. This goes against what we're trying to do as a big group. Don't do it, or else.
Yes, it's time to wrap up. You want to yell it? Okay, folks, that's it for the groups. We'll get back together as a whole group in 5 minutes.
I want to hear way more about that. What do you want to hear more about?
Is there anything, when you look at what all the groups came up with, is there any new things that are like jump out as what the big thing is in the semi-pro, what we discovered is there's some urgency around this. The fan base for semi-pro is growing. It's actually becoming international somewhat effectively. And so this whole issue of the semi-pro emerging is happening fairly quickly. And so there's an urgency around, if we're going to do something, we need to get on it. There is a plan that the prior cities have come up with that I thought was a really good plan until tonight. Now I'm not so sure. But the plan was, if we could agree with the AUDL that the values of gender equity and spirit of the game are actually something they agree to as well, that they want to get to a league that has spirit of the game at its core, gender equity actually played on the field, that we could agree to start collaborating with them as opposed to right now where our policy is we do not acknowledge their existence. And what we learned is we're not sure that they could be swayed. There's doubts about whether they could be swayed to adopt our values or whether they do adopt our values. That might sort of be a showstopper for that idea. But there was still agreement that we should be talking. The notion that we're not even conversing is wrong. And our current policy says we don't acknowledge it. So there is agreement that we should be talking. And then there is disagreement on any kind of endorsement. They could be all over the map, gun clinics at half times, really unsure of where the line would be drawn for any kind of endorsement at all. But the notion that but there is something on the other side of that line. So at that game that you just set up, the notion of doing some endorsement of that, where it's an actual women's game, even though it's for a league that is a men's league, that seemed to be yes, that you could endorse, you could promote women by promoting that game. So there's some line there that we could be on the side of doing something, but most of the endorsing was very shaky on whether that's a good idea. Okay, that's the total stuff. We're going to zip through this stuff really quickly and just be thinking about whether there's any themes that are jumping out at you, any big takeaways today. So Tom, can you do the Olympics?
Yeah, it was a very poorly facilitated. Basically, the convergence came to at the very end was just that it's positive to be in the family because of all of those groups that we're now affiliated with, talking to, and sort of the communities that we can maybe reach out into with the sport of ultimate that we couldn't have done before, so that's very positive. Getting on the Olympic program, maybe, but not if it compromises our values. It means we're spending resources on that instead of other more important stuff.
Boom. So, elite play, Will?
Okay, so we tried to address a lot of things in the Elite Ultimate that we talked very briefly about. One, we tried to do it all with a gender equity and diversity viewpoint. We talked about how a more regional structure is a possibility with having these like US Open national tournaments. How that is, there are roadblocks financially for players to be able to be on teams where they are traveling really far. So potentially keeping one bigger national tournament like the US Open, but having like Eastern or Western or things like that, so teams don't have to travel cross country for nationals and US Open and other tournaments. We talked about promoting all three divisions and really taking a critical equity look at that. Keeping consistent structures between mixed men's and women's as far as like how the season is formatted, just so that people have the same expectation of what they're signing up for. We talked about possibility of tournaments versus like team play, but that tournaments, again, talking about people's financial difficulties and things, it's way better to pay for a bunch of games than to try and do a lot of fights. We thought the observation was good. We, at the very end, brought up gender ratio and mixed, and did not get to talk much about it. We agree that it definitely needs to be talked about. And then the big highlight thing is that we want to showcase a product that has our values as a community. So what we wrote down is safety, respect, and spirit. Putting an emphasis on spirit scores in both the promotion and commentating and every part of it, like really bringing that to the forefront. And then how there have been a lot of discussions about like displays lately, and really like focusing on good things. It's probably a lot of
reading your chicken scratch or yeah, got it. So a little bit we talked about so the original question for branding was what are the challenges to the USA Ultimate brand and how can we address them? And it was I think that got confusing to some people of what that really meant, so we kind of translated it to more along the lines of what is the advantage of being associated with USA Ultimate? What do you want? Who do you want the brand to speak to? Those aim for more of those type of questions or answer those type of questions. Our ideal USA Ultimate brand, ultimate for everyone, so it's inclusive and accessible community, and then especially at the youth level. That was what we want the brand to be associated with, what the brand stands for. Not just supporting the league play at the expense of all the other levels. So really highlighting accessibility and inclusivity over the other space. And then it supports organizing of other groups and organizations. And said that this supporting is a big word. It can mean financial assistance. It can mean not putting up barriers. It can mean a lot. Supporting can mean a lot of different things. So supporting a District West can mean a lot of different things, right? So what exactly? Certainly the idea is great. Yes, USA Ultimate supporting District West. What does that mean, right? And then connected relationships. Represented by, all right, that one's good chicken scratch. And then the never easy community focus, kind of all this idea. All right, you lost me.
One was like feeling like I have a connection or relationship with USAU, not feeling like if I want to contact USAU that it's like, I don't know this person, do they care about me? Instead, I want to know that if I call up USAU, I have someone who's on my side.
Right.
Is what that point is.
Yes, you're right. Thank you. That's actually really good. Thank you for not letting me get over that. I also thought Tino had a really great point that I did want to bring up, and he said, basically, if you're legitimizing the sport to the rest of the world, so you're highlighting the highest level, you're maybe ostracizing or leaving a big group of people behind, people that don't play at that level, that don't identify at that level. You're missing that whole group, so I just want to make that point I mentioned. Thank you.
So Heather had to go to the airport to pick up somebody for Ultimate Peace. Does anyone from the youth group want to speak up for the youth development? I've got some notes here that I could read, but that'd be pretty boring compared to somebody from the group. Awesome, thank you very much.
All right, so we had a lot to talk about, and there were a lot of people in our group, which I think is a reflection of the fact that we really believe the youth is where it's at, and we need to be promoted with them the most. So that being said, we want to see some youth ambassadors to USAU board or whatever. We know that they talk to some club representatives, but we want to see high schoolers that they talk to, maybe even middle schoolers or elementary schoolers. It might be hard to get those kids actually there, but modern technology, you can Skype it. Keep the quality high too, though. Like, we want to see more kids playing, but there are already some programs like mine or like Sam Terry's or others, I'm sure, where we have like 400 kids that want to play and 6 people that can coach them. And that's just not a ratio that's sustainable. Like, we lose kids that could become great ultimate players and great community members because we are dealing with so many other kids that can do it too. And they slip by. You just can't deal with that many kids at once. Increased participation versus increased competition. There's this difficulty because there are a lot of really highly skilled kids, especially out of Seattle, but then there are a lot of kids that love Ultimate that are still learning how to run in a straight line. We want them all to play, right? So we have to be able to encourage the kids that are struggling and learning how to use their bodies just as much as we're encouraging the kids that maybe are getting on SportsCenter top 10 as a high schooler. We want to see a curriculum that's spread around to the schools. I've talked to a lot of PE teachers over the years who know nothing about Ultimate. Sometimes they still think it's disc golf. They are educators in the field of sports, so that's a problem. So we want to see a curriculum that's like one that's written for elementary kids, given PE teachers, maybe with a stack of J-stars. And then we want to see a curriculum for middle school kids, for high school kids, maybe even for college kids. Start young, definitely. It's really fun to watch 8- and 9-year-olds play. That's what I do most of the summer. It makes me really happy. They love it, and they want to keep doing it. Good. That being said, we have to develop coaches because already covered a little bit. There's not enough coaches for all the kids that want to play already. If we keep getting more and more kids, the coaches are just going to get spread thinner and thinner. Keeping resources to align with our values. So will USAU help fund things that we are like really pushing for girls' involvement or youth of color, underprivileged in whatever way you want to talk about? Maybe promote things more for those people and let the boys figure it out on their own more, because they're probably going to figure it out. The membership dues are often too expensive, especially for like a single event, or we talked a lot about like that Westerns and other regional tournaments disappeared, and that hurt numbers of participation in certain ways. I don't know as much about that topic as some people talked about before. Public schools, they're doing a great job of promoting it. Seattle Public Schools says in the fall, students can get PE waivers for doing Ultimate Frisbee. What a great incentive, but every school only gets money from one head coach and one assistant coach. So again, you have a school where there's enough kids for 8 teams, but the funds and the field space are really only there for one. So programs are still kind of trying to make it work so that we don't send kids on. Talked about eligibility rules a little bit. I didn't hear that person speak, so just making sure that eligibility rules are inclusive and create opportunities for everybody. Follow the models of good small local organizations. This Northwest has high enrollment. We have really high quality opportunities for kids of all ages. Model that and like, I don't know, take a pod of people from a strong program and ship them somewhere else for a month or a week or however long to help set up other programs. Outreach focus over competition. I think I sort of addressed that already. Competition stuff we decided will mostly take care of itself. High-level people will get it done, but kids that don't know what's going on or what the rules are yet, or even how to hold a frisbee disc, let's get them more discs and more teaching. Somebody raised up Miko. It would probably increase the funds coming in if you knew that when you paid your dues, you could say, I really want half of my dues to go towards youth development. You can take the other half and do what you will with it, but please, this money needs to go here. Instead of, I'm paying these dues, and I see people I know on TV maybe, but like, I don't know if anybody else is getting the help they need. And then just, again, taking care of the base. I think that's the biggest point that we came about, like, fund, support, train the young first, and it's really important that, like, aside from teaching them to throw a forehand and what, like, a force is, they need to know that the boy or girl that lives in a not-so-cool neighborhood and is struggling in a variety of ways is just as important on the field and off the field as they are, whoever else is involved.
So are there anything that is jumping out at you as sort of a theme that is running through all these groups? Something that is consistent that seems to be a message tonight? Yeah, exactly.
Communication.
Access. I like it. It's all one word. I can actually keep up with it.
Transparency.
Trusted local organizers. Trusted support for local organizers.
So there's a lot up there, and it's a little overwhelming maybe. If you have any other thoughts about it, now is your chance. Otherwise, yeah, go ahead.
Membership fees and travel visits are counterproductive to inclusion and diversity. Accessibility.
Okay. That's really clear. Thank you. There are dots that are being passed around, and if you would go up to the board here when we're done talking, and you've got 5 dots, and help us prioritize all of these issues. Where should we be putting more resources, more attention, more time? You've got your 5 dots. Think about where you want to put them. What's the most important thing up here? And that is a very helpful takeaway for us. I think everybody's a little tired. Danny's ready to go. All right.
Can I say something?
Yes.
I really appreciate this, just this night that we can do this, but this is the first time that I've had an opportunity to do something like this, and I think since we do all pay our fees every year, I would like to be treated more as a member, and if you are representing us, I'd like to have more opportunities to vote for these issues instead of like this one-time opportunity. Yeah.
I feel like that's kind of one of the overarching themes of a lot of this is like treating the people that make up the organization more as like humans versus like dollar signs or like numbers of members. And like relationship building and like caring more about the people that are in it already versus the people that are not in it, and like that and like having that be our focus.
Pause. All right, let's put up our dots. On the way out, let me fill out a comment card. Got any ideas how to do this?